Chapter 1200. Fortunately, this kind of empty field situation did not last for too long. After a few seconds, the fragments of white light after the collapse of the eight-armed serpent monster slowly gathered together and recondensed into a serpent monster with an attack power of 1,000. It was represented by its front and side attacks. Although this monster was not strong, no matter what, it could still be used as a barrier. It was better than nothing. Okay, my turn is over. On the other hand, after Fong Bujue had completed the battle phase, he did not have any more cards to play. Therefore, he immediately gave an ending declaration. It's your turn. At this time, Snow's expression had become quite solemn. At this moment, he did not have any cards in his hand, and he was at a disadvantage on the field. The field magic was placed in the neutral area, so it did not count as his field cards. This situation was very different from his pursuit of being the best in all three aspects of the field, HP, and card difference. Fong Bujue's fighting style that looked like it was risking his life, but in reality, it was calculated and calculated. It managed to suppress Snow's careful and calculated fighting style, and that affected the latter's emotions to a certain extent. What exactly went wrong? Snow muttered to himself in his heart. From the cards that Director's Prophecy flipped and the results of several dice rolls, in terms of luck, he can at most be considered to be at the level of an average deviation. In terms of tactics, he can't be compared to me. From the beginning to the end, this guy only played 3 cards, and the rest were all shuffled or discarded. But now, both his and my hand cards are 0, and he has a monster with 4,000 attack power on the field, but I only have a monster with a miscellaneous monster. What exactly is the factor that caused the difference? This was a very good question. If Fong Bujue were to answer, he would definitely say, this is the difference between a real duelist and scum like you. However, Snow had a more rational answer. Got it. It's the quality of the single card and the luck of the draw. After Snow pondered for a few seconds, he thought to himself, the cards that this guy uses all have expensive costs and special effect that have the nature of gambling. If he's not careful when using them, not only will he not be able to establish an advantage, he'll also suffer a huge loss. However, he uses every card very appropriately. And the most important thing is that in the second round, when he has 0 hands, he drew a Sakamoto coin. With this draw, he was able to summon such a powerful monster under the premise of 0 cost. Just the card difference advantage that he exchanged for this hand is already 2 to 3 cards. Later on, the Sakamoto-kun, his special effect was successfully activated, causing me to lose 2 cards for nothing. As time went by, it became the current situation. Hey, why are you in a daze? After waiting for a few seconds, Fong Bujue saw that the other party did not respond, so he began to urge, if you want to surrender, just say it. After thinking things through, Snow's confidence came back. He smiled and replied in a loud voice, don't worry, I'm just sorting out my thoughts. I'll start now. As he spoke, he raised the dual plate that he wore on his left arm and stretched his right hand towards the deck of cards. My turn, draw a card, Snow declared and took the opportunity to draw a card. Then he placed the card that he had drawn in front of his eyes and looked at it. At that moment, his expression was sluggish and shocked, and then it turned into a strange smile. Ha. This standard 3-part laugh undoubtedly announced the emergence of a more astonishing situation. What are you doing? You've drawn a magic card that can replenish your hand, and then you're laughing foolishly? Fong Bujue said, staring at him with his dead fish eyes. Snow sighed deeply. To be honest, according to my own thoughts, it's indeed best to draw a magic card that can replenish my hand at this time, but sometimes, when luck comes, there's no stopping it. As he said that, he slapped the card in his hand on the dual plate. I'll summon from my hand one of the 3 demon gods, Nine-Tailed Fox Tamamo no Mei. Following Snow's summoning declaration, a beautiful woman wearing a luxurious plum red cloak appeared in the arena and stood in front of Sakamoto-kun. Fong Bujue knew the special effect of this card even without looking, because this was a god card. In Crazy Thoughts' existing card pool, there were a total of 4 sets of god cards, which were the twin demons of heaven and earth, the 3 demon gods, the divinity 7 stars, and the nameless king. In terms of strength, every set and every card in the god card series was shockingly strong. However, according to the harshness of the summoning conditions, it was easiest to gather the twin demons of heaven and earth, followed by the 3 demon gods, and so on. The nameless king was almost a god that could not be summoned. Let's not talk about the other sets of god cards, just the one in front of him. Nine-tailed fox Tamamo Nome could be said to be the easiest card to summon out of the 3 demon gods. There were 2 ways to summon her. The first way was naturally the normal summoning, which was to offer 3 sacrifices to summon her from the hand. This kind of 3 sacrifices summoning was basically the standard for god cards. As for the second method, it was a special summon. When the opponent has at least 1 male monster, it has to be male. Asexual species or female monsters are not allowed. With an attack power of 3,000 and above, and the total number of cards in the opponent's hand is less than 2, Tamamonome, the 9-tailed fox, can be summoned directly from the hand without any sacrifice. If Fong Bujue's previous draw of Sakamoto-kun was considered a godly draw, then Snow's current draw of Tamamonome was simply a godly draw. The troublesome thing is on the stage. Fong Bujua looked at the monster with 0 attack and defense, but a hint of seriousness flashed in his eyes. In his mind, he had already quickly analyzed what kind of battle tactics his opponent would use with this card. Speaking of which, you can actually draw a god in the random card selection mode. With this kind of luck, don't tell me you have more than 1 card. Huh? Who knows? Snow smiled mysteriously and avoided this question. Even if there is, you might not be able to see it. After saying this, he immediately changed the topic and returned to the game. The special effect of 9-tailed fox Tamamo no Mei. Activate. Tamamo no Mei can reduce the attack and defense of all male creatures in the opponent's field by half, and the total value of the attack and defense reduced will all become Tamamo no Mei's attack and defense until the beginning of my next turn. As he spoke, Tamamo no Mei in the arena threw a flirtatious glance at Sakamoto. Sakamoto-kun's expression did not change, but his attack was reduced to 2,000 points, and the 2,000 points of attack that were reduced became Tamamo no Mei's attack. You should be glad, Fong Bujua. After Snow finished his declaration, he continued, At this moment, if you have a lot of male monsters in the arena, then you would already be dead. Fong Bujua also snorted coldly and replied, What a boring assumption. Tamamo no Mei's special effect of absorbing attack and defense can only be activated in the main stage of each round. Even if my sword-wielding deceiver is still here, his attack outside of the battle stage is also 0. The attack that you have absorbed is also only 2,000 points. Oh, looks like you are very clear about the special effects of the godly cards. 2 seconds later, Snow said again, Then, you should also be clear that 9-tailed fox Tamamo no Mei has more than 1 special effect. While he was saying this, the monster's form on the arena had already begun to change. This was the second special effect of 9-tailed fox Tamamo no Mei demon fox transformation. But then, that stunning beauty turned around and raised her cloak. In the blink of an eye, she had already transformed into a huge demon fox. Her fur was silver white, as clear as the moonlight, bright and pure. Her eyes were as red as blood, revealing an oppressive demon aura. Behind her huge figure, 9 huge tails were like flames soaring into the sky, dancing wildly in the air. To be honest, just based on this animation effect, the 10 stars godly card was worthy of its name. The second special effect of 9-tailed fox Tamamo no Mei. Transform into a demon fox, destroy one of the opponent's cards, and allow the controller to draw 9 cards from a deck. Before Snow finished speaking, he had already begun to draw cards. Unfortunately, you don't have any cards for me to destroy, but just based on this card drawing effect, I will also activate this move. After he finished speaking, the 9 cards had already been drawn. At this moment, objectively speaking, Feng Bujue had already fallen into a very dangerous situation. Because, in this round, Snow's battle stage had yet to begin. Relying on the cards that he had just drawn, a total of 9 cards in his hand, he was very likely to defeat Feng Bujue. Not to mention that Brother Ju did not have a single card in his magic trap area now. Even if he had a hidden card, it might not be able to solve the problem, because all godly cards could resist magic and traps to a certain extent. Of course, every godly card had a different performance in this regard. For example, some cards were immune to all magic traps, and some were immune to magic traps targeted at individual monsters, but they were still affected by some general-purpose cards. In addition, there were also godly cards that could reverse the effects of magic or traps. And the nine-tailed fox, Temamo no Mei, in Snow's field belonged to the category of immune to all magic and traps. Ha ha ha! Snow stared at the 9 cards in his hand for a long time. While looking at the cards, he glanced at Feng Bujue from time to time and laughed a few times, as if the other party was already a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Even if you repeatedly laugh at me lewdly, I won't panic. But Feng Bujue calmly responded with sarcasm. You can't win against me, this is beyond doubt. He laughed as well. It doesn't matter if you have 9 cards or 10 cards. It doesn't matter if there's a god or a demon on the field. People like you who despise duels will never be able to defeat a real duelist like me. When Snow heard such words that went against his own philosophy, he was a little annoyed again. Enough is enough. You're already in your 20s. Don't you feel ashamed saying such childish lines? I don't feel that way, Feng Bujue replied without even thinking about it, and asked in return, what's wrong? Could it be that for you, wearing a dual plate to duel with others is a very shameful thing? It's okay, Snow answered. After all, I don't know how to use your words and actions. That's why I said you don't understand anything. Feng Bujue said, there's no point in wasting time with people like you. If you're done laughing, then make your move. After all, you can't kill me, right? Tisk. When Snow heard that, he could not help but scoff. He was really annoyed because he was indeed unable to kill Feng Bujue. He had drawn a total of 9 cards. There were monsters, magic, and traps, but no matter how he calculated and combined them, he was unable to obtain victory in the current round. I'll summon the evil Kappa from my hand. Attack! Snow had not used up his usual summoning power for this turn, so he summoned another monster onto the field. After the summoning declaration, a humanoid creature that was less than 1 meter tall with an ape's face and a bird's beak appeared on the Colosseum. Evil Kappa, launch a direct attack on Feng Bujue. After Snow summoned this monster, he ordered it to attack. Of course, this was also possible. According to the rules, if a player commanded a monster to attack without saying the words, enter the battle phase, the system would assume that the player had entered the battle phase and would terminate the main phase. Soon, the sticky thing rushed over to slap Brother Ju. However, this Kappa's attack was even weaker than the lamp monster's. It was only a 2-star monster with 800 attack, but because of the effect of Hypoxia Zone, it could still bypass Sakamoto-kun and attack the players directly. Python monster, attack directly. Before the Kappa could finish attacking, Snow had already given another attack command. Hiss! The attack of the Python monster was not that high. Feng Bujue used the fighting disc to parry the attack, and he managed to survive it. However, when these weak attacks were added together, it brought Brother Ju's LP down to 1,500. He was in a state where he would die after taking one more attack. But it was this attack that Snow was unable to deal with, because Tamamo no Mei, the 9-tailed fox, was unaffected by any magic or trap. In other words, she was immune to the effect of the Hypoxia Zone and could not bypass the humanoid monsters to attack the player. Furthermore, since both her and Sakamoto-kun's attack power were at 2,000, she could not pass this wall either. Snow naturally couldn't let his supernatural entity that could still continuously change its attack and defense die together with the opponent's normal monster that had already activated its special effects. Therefore, his Tamamo no Mei could only AFK in this round of battle. I'll stamp 4 cards. After pausing for a few seconds, Snow said resentfully, "In this round." "Huh, what did I say?" Fong Bujue saw this and laughed arrogantly. "A deck without soul, no matter how big the advantage is, it is nothing but a bubble. Stop wasting time." Snow's anger was provoked. "I have 3 monsters on the field for cover cards and 4 cards in my hand, but you only have 1 monster on the field and no cards in your hand. Do you think you can survive until next round?" This sentence caused Brother Ju to laugh even more crazily. "You are the one who is spouting nonsense. The first card in the deck symbolizes the hope and determination of the duelist towards victory. As long as there are cards in the deck, I will not give up." After saying this, he used that exaggerated posture again and waved his arm. "My turn, draw a card." Chapter 1201. At this moment, I'll activate the trap. Just as Brother Bujue was about to draw the card, Snow quickly shouted, "Grudge!" As soon as the declaration came out, the animation effect followed closely behind. A trap card that was covered on his field flipped over, revealing the card's description. This card can be activated during the opponent's card draw round. Its effect is to declare a type of card. In the 2 card draw rounds, including this round, as long as the opponent draws the type of card that I declare, he must discard the card that he draws. Speaking of this, Snow paused for a second and said, "The type of card that I declare is magic card." When he said that, Fong Bujue looked at the card in his hand expressionlessly and mumbled in a strange tone, "Is this a magic card?" "Oomph. If you've guessed correctly, please discard the card in your hand." Snow snorted coldly. "Of course, even if you insist on not discard it, the system won't allow it." "Yeah," Fong Bujue said so. At this point, he waved his hand and covered the card that he had drawn in the monster area of the duel plate. In the arena, a huge card image that was placed horizontally immediately appeared. "I'll summon a monster as a token of defense on the inside." Fong Bujue's declaration was tantamount to announcing that the other party had not guessed correctly. What he had drawn was not a magic card. "TSK, consider yourself lucky." Snow pursed his lips unhappily. "However, this still doesn't change anything. You won't be able to survive the next round." He had a great advantage in the arena, so he had this confidence. When Snow launched the grudge, he had thought it through carefully. In such a game with such a huge card gap, if the disadvantaged party wanted to turn the tables, they could only rely on magic 80% of the time. Whether it was to replenish the cards in one's hand or to clear the field, rapid attack magic was the most effective card type that could take effect instantly at almost all stages. Therefore, Snow declared the magic card. If Fong Bujue really drew a magic card, he would have to discard the card, which would be equivalent to losing. Even if he couldn't draw it, the situation wouldn't change much. After all, Brother Ju couldn't rely on his HP to survive another round. No matter what, he had to play all the cards in his hand to survive the next round. In this way, Snow could once again judge the type of card by the position of the cards. Simply put, the cards in the front row were monsters, and the cards in the back row were traps. Anyway, it could not possibly be magic. "Don't worry, I'll live until you die." On the other hand, Fong Bujue's momentum did not diminish at all. As he spoke, he gave the order to attack. "Sakamoto-kun, attack the python monster. Knees. Trap card. Activate." This time, Brother Ju was only halfway through his declaration of attack. In fact, it had already taken effect. The name of the move after that could not be said, when Snow interrupted him. Demon's Awareness. This was the second Demon's Awareness card in his deck, and its effect was mentioned earlier. There was no doubt that the Python monster was also a monster of the Demon Clan, and it now met the condition of being attacked. Therefore, the trap card was successfully activated. After some manipulation, the Python monster turned into a white light and became an offering. The other demon in Snow's deck, Nodarafu, was specially summoned. The image of Nodarafu was roughly that of a monk wearing a tattered black Japanese monk robe. Its appearance was dejected and strange. Although it did not give off a strong or ferocious feeling, it exuded waves of eerie aura. According to legend, Nodarafu was a demon that appeared in an abandoned temple. Because the villagers never went to the temple to give alms, the abbot died of resentment. After his death, his resentment turned him into a demon. Every evening, he would appear in the abandoned temple and ring the bell alone. The sound of the bell sounded very sad. If someone stayed in the temple, Nodarafa would bite the guest's throat. 2,000 attack power. When Feng Bujue saw the card, he read it aloud. And it has the special effect of when there are other friendly monsters on the field, it cannot be attacked. How is it? You should be desperate now, right? Snow then said, I know what you're planning. You're hoping to kill my python monster, and then let Sakamoto-kun continue to fight. This way, in the next round, my Tamamonome still won't be able to hit you, and you'll still be able to take the evil Kappa's 800 attack power. Ha! What a pity. Now I have another monster with 2,000 attack power on the field, and this monster can also rely on the effect of Hypoxia Belt to attack you directly. Even if you use Sakamoto-kun to kill evil Kappa now, in the next round, you will still be killed by Nodarafu. Sakamoto-kun, attack evil Kappa. Secret technique, knee attack. This time, Feng Bujue did not pay any attention to his opponent. He just looked away and commanded the monsters on the field to attack again. After he finished speaking, the strange battle posture appeared again. Sakamoto-kun appeared behind Evil Kappa in a flash and used his long knees to smash the back of Evil Kappa's head. Since this was an all-ages game, the scene of the skull being smashed was not very obvious. At the moment when the monster was killed, the monster that was killed turned into white light and exploded. Beep, beep, beep. After the monster was finished, Snow's LP was also deducted by 1,200 points, but he still had more than 6,000 LP. TSK. Then, Snow snorted and said, Evil Kappa's special effect. Activate. It was obvious that the Evil Kappa was also an effect monster. According to Snow's logic, this kind of monster with only 800 attack power was not worthy of being included in the deck, just because it was a demon. When Evil Kappa is killed, you can add a demon monster with more than 2,000 attack power to your hand from the deck. Then, you can shuffle the deck. When Snow said this, the system's special effect of floating card selection had already appeared in front of him. He quickly completed his selection on the virtual interface. Then, a card automatically popped out from the deck of the dual disc. Snow took out the card and looked at it for a while before putting it into his hand. At the same time, his dual disc automatically shuffled his deck. Your turn ends here, right? 2 seconds later, Snow spoke again with a murderous look in his eyes. My turn ends. Feng Bujue indeed had nothing else to do. He had already played the cards that he had drawn. The monsters on the field had also attacked. My turn. Draw a card. Before his opponent could finish his sentence, Snow shouted loudly and drew with his hand. After looking at the card that he had drawn, he said, At this moment, the special effect of Nine-Tailed Fox Tamamome will be recalculated. As he spoke, Tamamome's attack and defense returned to 0, while Sakamoto-kun's attack power returned to 4,000 points. However, after a second, Tamamome's Absorb special effect began to activate again. As Feng Bujue's other monster card was the Inner Guard, its gender and race were unknown, so it was not included in the absorption range. Therefore, this time, Tamamome could only absorb Sakamoto-kun's attack and defense. In the blink of an eye, Sakamoto-kun's attack and defense were halved again, and the value that was reduced was added to Tamamome's body. All right, I'll be frank with you. After calculating the effect, Snow's eyes moved to the Guardian monster card that Feng Bujue had on the battlefield. Your solution is obvious. You know that the hypoxic zone is only effective on the monsters on the outside and the monsters on the inside. Since the species is unknown before the card is flipped open, they will not be affected by this effect. In other words, no matter what your monster card is, in order to survive this turn, using the Inner Guard card to cover it is your only choice. After saying that, he extended 3 fingers. Of course, for me, behind your no choice, there are still 3 possibilities that need to be figured out. Snow paused for a moment, then said, First, the monster card you covered is a monster that does not have any inside flip effect, and it will be affected by hypoxic zone. In this case, you will definitely die. Even if this monster's defense is more than 2,000, monsters with an attack of more than 2,000 that can be summoned without sacrifice will definitely be accompanied by some kind of negative effect, but monsters with a defense of more than 2,000 don't have any negative effect. It will be useless. As long as I use Tamamome to attack it once, it will become the Outer Guard card, and its race will be clear. Then my Not-Era square will be able to go past it and attack you directly. Second, the monster card you covered does not have an inside flip effect, but it will not be affected by Hypoxic Zone, and at the same time, it has a defense of more than 2,000. In this case, I will have to think of a way to defeat this monster in order to kill you. But what is the probability of you surviving? Not to mention whether or not you have a card in your deck that fits the above conditions. Even if you do, will you be able to draw it in this turn? Third, the monster card you covered is a card with an inside flip effect. In this case, it doesn't matter whether it is affected by Hypoxic Zone, because this kind of summon monster with a flip effect will definitely not have a defense of more than 2,000. As long as it is attacked, it will die, and after it dies, you won't have a wall to use. The remaining question is, what is the effect of this monster? After he finished his analysis, he finally smiled and said, "Oh, right. The above assumption is still based on the fact that I don't do anything this turn and directly enter the battle stage. Now that I have said this, do you still think that you will have a next turn? As a person who is not even a duelist, you are quite good at talking." Fong Bujue crossed his arms in front of his chest and stood proudly, completely unmoved. "Whether I have a next turn or not, won't you know once you try?" "Tisk, damn duck, your ability to be stubborn is superb," Snow said unhappily. Snow replied unhappily, "Are you trying to bluff, to make me think that you're covering an effect monster so that I won't dare to act rashly? Stop dreaming. Sigh." At this moment, Fong Bujue suddenly sighed and said something that seemed to have nothing to do with the current topic. "So, in the card draw, just now, you didn't get a summon monster that doesn't require sacrifices, right?" This sentence made Snow's pupils contract and his expression tense. Before you drew the card, you were clearly murderous and full of confidence. But after you drew the card, your aura changed. Fong Bujue continued. "Then you gave me a long speech, using various possibilities to test my reaction. You wanted to find clues from the changes in my expression or body language." Huh. As he said this, he pretended to yawn. "These are all tricks that I have played for a long time. I advise you to save it." Damn it. Snow was already cursing in his heart. He was a little angry from being exposed again. After pausing for a second, Snow said loudly to Brother Bujue, "How do you know that I didn't draw a summon monster?" "It's very simple," Fong Bujue said. "In the last round, you summoned the Evil Kappa, which only had an attack power of 800, in a situation where it could directly cause LP damage to me, as long as it was on the field. Even if you gave up on the monster's flip special effect, you should have summoned a monster with a higher attack power. It can be seen that in the remaining 4 cards in your hand at that time, there were no monsters that were below 4 stars. More than 5 stars would require sacrifices to summon normally." He paused for half a second and said, "According to my judgment, at the end of the last round, the 4 cards in your hand should have been a combination of 1 secondary trap, 1 quick attack magic, and 2 superior monsters. Or it could have been a combination of 1 quick attack magic, 1 superior monster, and 2 secondary trap magic cards." When he said this, Snow tried to control the change in expression on his face, but he was secretly shocked. "I actually guessed right again. Yes, the 4 cards in his hand at that time were 1 secondary trap, 1 quick attack magic, and 2 superior monsters. With your level and style, you wouldn't have placed all 5 cards in the magic trap area." Fong Bujue continued. "Because after the area is filled up, before there is an empty space, you will not be able to cast any spells that are quick to attack. This is your inclination. In order to carry out the concept of full suppression and foolproof, you would leave some leeway to a certain extent. So, I speculate that you kept at least 1 or 2 trap cards that you thought were not so urgently needed to be placed in your hand, and you also held a quick attack magic card. The fact that you used Fiend's Awareness on the Serpent monster is the best evidence. If you didn't want to clear a spot in the hidden deck as soon as possible, you wouldn't have done that. If you had left Fiend's Awareness to the evil Kappa and let Sakamoto-kun kill this serpent monster, you would have lost 200 LP less. However, you couldn't wait because the grudge would only be removed from the field in the next round when I draw the cards. If you didn't activate the Demon's Awareness at that time, you would still only have one empty space in your magic trap area in this round. This is what you don't want to see. According to this train of thought, it's basically clear what kind of cards the 4 cards in your hand are. At the beginning of this round, you were confident that you would draw a 4-star monster or below. After all, you had drawn 9 cards in a row, and only one of them, the evil Kappa, was a random monster used for sacrifice. Considering the balance of the card deck, the probability of drawing this kind of card again was very high. However, we didn't draw it. If I get it, everything will be fine. I'll just send it onto the field and use this trash to attack my inner guard card and trigger the effect. That'll be fine. But now, the monsters in your field, one of them is a godly card that can't get past the Sakamoto-kun wall, and the other one is a monster with an effect of more than 2000 ATK. It's very wasteful to use these 2 monsters as sacrifices. It's also not suitable. Even if you're willing to do so, the situation won't change. After the sacrifice, the number of monsters on the field will still be 2. If you want to kill them in this round, you will have to take a risk. You will have to let your powerful monster attack my Gar monster with an unknown effect. At this point, Fong Bujue closed his eyes and snorted coldly, "Humph." If you are a real duelist, you won't be confused and hesitant at this moment. But you are the one who is bluffing, and yet you say that I am bluffing. In an instant, he opened his eyes and glared at Sakamoto-kun. What a joke. I have already said, I will not lose to you. You could do whatever you want. Come at me if you dare. Chapter 1202. You keep calling yourself a real duelist. You don't know what you're talking about. Snow was getting angrier and angrier. On one hand, it was because his opponent had confidently proclaimed a completely different concept from his. On the other hand, it was because his opponent had seen through his hand. Since you're so arrogant, I'll show you what I'm made of. As he spoke, he made 2 consecutive moves. I'll first stamp a card, then I'll activate the rapid attack magic from my hand. Hand overdraft. This card could be played at any time. When it was activated, both players would immediately replenish their hands to 6 cards and discard 3 cards at the end of the next turn of either side. This card was obtained by Snow through Tamamonome's special effect. Based on the number of cards in his hand and the situation on the field at that time, stamp cards, summon monsters, and 4 cards left in his hand, there was not much point in activating it. He might even lose. In the subsequent turn with Fong Bujue, he would not activate it. Not only would he lose, but he would also give his opponent a supplementary card. But at this moment, Snow urgently needed a summoned monster below 4-star to determine his victory. The 6 cards in his hand, 1 hand overdraft, 1 secondary trap card, 2 superior monsters, 1 card that he had drawn this turn, and 1 superior monster that the evil Kappa had replenished in his hand, just happened to be missing. Therefore, he stamped a trap card. There were 2 empty slots in the magic trap area on his field, and the remaining 3 slots had 2 stamp cards and a grudge that was out in the open, and cast hand overdraft. Therefore, under the effect of the rapid attack magic, Snow drew 2 more cards. Although his method did not maximize the effect of overdraft hand, and he even lost a card. In this situation, where as long as I draw a monster below 4-star, it is very likely that the battle will end in front of this opportunity to kill. Any degree of loss of cards was acceptable. Card games were not a complete information game, like Go or Chinese chess. Instead, it was an incomplete information game, with contingencies, uncertainties, and many random factors. In such a game, there were many steps that could not be distinguished from right and wrong until the very last moment. Perhaps a decision that seemed to be a loss might not actually be a loss, and might even prove to be the best strategy in the end. However, a strategy that seemed to be worth it might end up being a foreshadowing of defeat. The most ridiculous but most interesting part was that under certain circumstances, Even if one made hundreds of mistakes, as long as one's deck was strong enough and one's luck was good enough, one could still win. But no matter what, at this time and place, that was Snow's judgment. And, judging from the results, he had indeed drawn the card that he wanted. Ha! He's here. Now that things had come to this, Snow had nothing to hide. Even if the other party was just trying to trick him when he activated Overdraft of Hand cards, the other party should have confirmed that he was indeed looking for a low-rank monster. Moreover, he was about to draw this card immediately, so he might as well just say that he had drawn it. No matter how much I shuffle the card deck, I should have drawn so many cards in a row. As he spoke, Snow slapped one of the 2 cards that he had drawn on the monster section of his duel board. I'll summon from my usual hand. Hey Jean. As soon as he made his declaration, an ugly old woman in ragged clothes with unkempt hair and a dirty face appeared in the arena. She stood there with a hideous grin on her face, holding a bloody kitchen knife in one hand and a small cloth bag that was still oozing blood in the other. Hey Jean, also known as the corpse thief ghost, was a ghost that lived in graveyards. It would steal the corpses of people who had just died and send them to their homes to scare them as a prank. Sometimes it would only cut off a certain part of the corpse and take it out for a stroll. Hence, some people called it the corpse thief ghost. Next is the battle stage. After Snow had finished summoning the monster, he immediately followed up with a battle declaration. Hey Jean, attack the monster guarding the opponent's field. When he launched this attack, Snow was almost certain that he had won. In his opinion, there were only 2 possibilities for Brother Jew to survive. 1. The monster that he had summoned had more than 2,000 defense and was not affected by the hypoxic zone. 2. His monster was an effect monster, and the flip effect could block the attacks of the other 2 monsters. Logically speaking, the probability of both was very low. First, you had to have that kind of card, and second, you had to be lucky enough to draw it. However, the reality was good timing. At the same time, Fong Bujua was already laughing. At this moment, the flip effect of the monster is activated. Before he finished speaking, the monster card that represented the inner side of the field was flipped out and materialized on the field. Squelch. This was the sound effect of Hey Jean, S attack on the monster. Because Brother Jewsgar monster was Unstable Slime. Unstable Slime. S special effect has been activated. In the next second, Fong Bujua shouted with vigor. When this monster is attacked and destroyed, it will split into 2 slime tokens and place it on the field as a guard. He spread his hands and laughed. Although slime tokens have 0 attack and 0 defense and can't be used as a sacrifice, they could be used as a wall to block your remaining 2 monsters. When Snow saw the slime split into 2 like jelly, he knew that his plan to kill his opponent in this round was not going to work. It just has to have such a disgusting effect. Slime tokens did not have gender differences. Even if there were, it had 0 attack and 0 defense. It would not be able to provide a boost to Tamamonome in the next round. Moreover, these 2 things were obviously not affected by the hypoxic zone, so they could block attacks for the players. Nodarafu, Tamamonome, kill those 2 small fries. Snow gave the order to attack in exasperation. His 2 powerful monsters on the field easily swatted away the 2 slime tokens as if they were flies. However, in this round, Fong Bujua did not lose any LP. According to the rules of Crazy Thoughts, when a monster represented by the guard was destroyed in battle, the player did not have to take any damage from the battle, unless the attacker had some card effect that could be calculated. Therefore, after this seemingly disadvantageous battle, Fong Bujua survived. I'll put another card on it. After all the monsters attacked, Snow put a card on the last empty space in his magic trap area and said, in this round. Fong Bujua was waiting for this moment. Rapid Attack Magic. Magic Deathmatch. Activate. Under the effect of overdraft of cards in hand. Just now, Brother Jew now had a total of 6 cards in his hand. Logically speaking, at the moment when Snow said the end declaration, both he and Snow should have discarded 3 cards from their hands. However, Brother Jew took the opportunity to activate the rapid attack magic before the effect of discarding cards took effect. What? Snow heard, and his expression changed abruptly. It's actually Magic Deathmatch. He obviously knew the effect of this card, which was why he had such a reaction. When the Magic Deathmatch is activated, Fong Bujue began to explain with a hot-blooded face. Both players have to place all the magic and trap cards in their hands into the field one by one and immediately activate them. In the case of unable to activate, the card will be shown to the opponent and then placed. As he spoke, he waved his arm and pointed, continuing in a sarcastic tone. Given that Your Excellency's magic trap area is now completely full, there is no place to place cards at all. So, this has nothing to do with you. Just watch my performance. This guy, Snow, was so angry that he was grinding his teeth, but he could not do anything about it. The first card. Soon, Fong Bujue played a card from his hand. Trap card, friendly damage. The effect of this card is during the enemy's battle phase, and when the enemy has more than 2 monsters on the field, choose one of the monsters to battle with the other. Nine-tailed fox Tamamonome is not affected by this kind of thing, Snow said coldly. Don't worry, I know her special effects. Fong Bujue said, the effect of this card is not to control one of the monsters to attack the other, but to use it on both monsters at the same time. Therefore, Tamamonome, a monster that is immune to traps, cannot be chosen as one of the targets. Luckily, you have 2 other monsters on the field, don't you? At this point, he raised his voice, Nod Era Square, Kurizuka, let's fight. As soon as he said that, the 2 monsters turned around and attacked each other ferociously. In the end, Nod Era Square, which had higher attack power, won. Kurizuka's attack power was 1,500, which was definitely higher than Brother Jew's unstable slime. But now he was defeated in the battle and caused 500 LP damage to his master, Snow. At this moment, Kurizuka's special effect is activated. After Snow's LP was reduced to 5,500, he said in a displeased tone, when he dies, summon a broken corpse monster that has 500 attack and 500 defense. Before he could finish his sentence, the cloth bag that Kurizuka dropped on the ground opened by itself. Then, a small monster made of broken body parts crawled out from the bag. The second card. Fong Bujue ignored his opponent and slapped down the second card. Normal spell. Pot of Abstinence. When this card is activated, both players will choose a card from their hand and show it to their opponent before shuffling it back into the deck. In the following duel, whoever draws the card first will immediately lose 1,000 LP. Both he and Snow were very efficient people. By the time they finished speaking, the 2 of them had already picked out a card from their hands. Snow chose a 7-star monster that required 2 sacrifices to summon. He had 2 of these cards in his hand. Simply put, he would be stuck if he kept them. Fong Bujue, on the other hand, chose a 6-star monster that required a single sacrifice to summon. Since he only had 3 cards left in his hand, Magic Deathmatch, Friendly Damage, and Pot of Abstinence were among the 6 cards he had. Even if he did not put the card back into the deck, he would have to discard it in the graveyard later. After the 2 of them finished displaying their cards, they each put the cards back into the deck. The dual disc automatically completed the shuffling. Then the third card. A second later, Fong Bujue slapped down another card. This guy, how many cards does he have that are magic traps? Snow was starting to panic because at this point, Fong Bujue only had 1 card left in his hand. In other words, after this chain of his was over, at most, he would have to discard 1 card due to the effect of overdraft in hand. Normal spell. Programmer's negligence. Activate. Fong Bujue continued with his actions. The special effect of this card is to declare a card. No matter if this card is on the field, in the graveyard, in the hand, in the deck, or even if it has been excluded, no matter what the original special effect of this card is, as long as this card actually exists in this duel, then at this current stage, this card will lose all its special effects. Hearing this, Snow laughed. A layman will always be a layman. This, Programmer's Negligence, card is your only chance to kill Tamamonome. Just now, you just had to bear with it and discard 3 cards. Then during your own battle phase, you used this spell on Tamamo no Mei. You would have been able to kill her without triggering Tamamo no Mei's death effect. Yes, Tamamo no Mei still has a special effect. He looked at Brother Ju with disdain. But you, because you felt that it was a loss to discard 3 cards, you forcefully activated Magic Deathmatch during my end phase. Therefore, this in a stage, even a god can be suppressed spell was wasted by you just like that. He was right. This card was indeed an excellent way to get rid of a god card. If it was activated during the battle phase, it could reduce Tamamo no Mei's attack and defense back to 0, and it could also restrict her death effect. At this time, if Brother Ju used Sakamoto's 4,000 attack on her, then not only would the battle stage, even her LP would be equal. However, forcefully activating it during the end phase of the opponent's turn was indeed useless. However, these were just the thoughts of ordinary people. After a while, Feng Bujue also smiled. It was an evil smile, a smile that made people shudder. What did I say that I was going to use this card on Tamamo no Mei? In this duel, this was the first time that Feng Bujue showed such an expression. Those who were familiar with Brother Jun knew that when he showed such an expression, the person who stood opposite him would be in big trouble. What did you say? Snow did not understand what the other party wanted to do. Of course, he would understand soon. The card that I announced is... Feng Bujue said. He slowly raised his right arm and pointed at his card graveyard. The Nameless King that is currently sleeping in my graveyard. Snow could not believe his ears. He almost blurted out, "What did you say? This is impossible. How could the Nameless King be in your graveyard?" Before he finished speaking, he stopped abruptly, because at this moment, a set of memories flashed in front of his eyes. It's at that time, a few seconds later, Snow's face was full of shock, and he muttered in a daze. "That's right, it's at that time," Feng Bujue said. In this duel, Feng Bujue only had one opportunity to throw the Nameless King into the graveyard, and that was, I used the cost of throwing a card into the graveyard to special summon Sword-Wielding Deceiver. Feng Bujue repeated the sentence that he said in the first round. Do you still remember? You actually... Snow was completely speechless. At the beginning of the game, you threw the Nameless King card into the graveyard. He did not understand. He really did not understand. He could not figure it out and could not understand it. What logic? What intention? What the hell? Snow used a parallel sentence to fully express his current feelings. Ha! That's why I said that you still have a long way to go. Feng Bujue said, "Fools who look down on duels. Take a good look and see how a real duelist wins this battle." After saying that, he used a move that was so cool that it was embarrassing. He slapped the last card in his hand onto the duel plate. This is the 4th card that I'm going to activate, and it's also the last one. Feng Bujue said in a low voice. Normal magic. Resurrection of the dead. He paused for half a second, stood upright, and waved his arm again. The target of this card is, at this stage, regarded as a normal card and can temporarily be affected by magic cards. The strongest god, Nameless King. Chapter 1203. When the Nameless King appeared, the sky above the two of them suddenly turned dark and gloomy. For a moment, dark clouds loomed over the horizon, and a whirlwind swirled. As the wind and clouds converged, a bolt of lightning descended from the sky, and a proud figure appeared. The Nameless King was dressed in an ancient Egyptian costume and had a sham-made hairstyle. He was also equipped with 7 golden ornaments from head to toe, or rather, 7,000-year-old artifacts. This is the Nameless King. Snow looked at the man who appeared in the arena and muttered, "I can't believe he was summoned in such a way. Okay, my chain ends here." At the same time, Feng Bujue, who was standing opposite him, said, "At this moment, the discard effect of overdrawn hand began to take effect." He spread out his hands with a mocking look on his face. "Unfortunately, I have no more cards in my hand." TSK. Snow heard this and snorted. He threw the remaining 3 cards in his hand into the graveyard in a very displeased manner. Then next, 2 seconds later, Feng Bujue continued in a loud voice, "It's officially my turn. The special effect of the strongest god has been activated. Because programmer's negligence only lasted for one stage, after Snow's end of turn period, all the special effects of the Nameless King returned. There are a total of 7 special effects of the Nameless King. Obviously, Fong Bujua's performance had just begun. Compared to the series of chain reactions that were about to happen, the Magic Deathmatch just now was just a warm-up. Special Effect 1, Thousand-Year Eye. Fong Bujua pointed at the opponent's field. At the beginning of a player's turn, if there is a Nameless King on one's field, he can see through the opponent's hand and all the cards on the field. As soon as he finished speaking, the system's animation followed suit. The Nameless King raised an eyeball-shaped golden ornament and shone on the back of Snow's cards. The back of his cards immediately became translucent. Snow had just thrown out all his cards, and the 3 cards in the monster field were already clear. The only cards left were the cards in the magic trap field. Now, under the Nameless King, a special effect. Other than the grudge that was already shown on the side, the other 4 cards were also shown one by one. I see. Fong Bujua looked at his opponent's cards and said, "This configuration really suits your style." At this moment, of the 4 cards that Snow had, 3 were traps and 1 was a magic trap. The first trap card was Dragged to Hell. Its effect was that when one of the monsters on your side died in battle, it would destroy the attacking monster as well. This card was naturally added to Snow's hand during the turn when he summoned Tamamonome. It was also one of the 4 cards that were sealed at that time. Previously, when Sakamoto-kun killed Evil Kappa, Snow could actually activate this special effect. However, under the circumstances at that time, there was no benefit in doing so, because Snow had a huge advantage at that time, and he could complete the kill at any time. Under the influence of Hypoxia Zone, even if Sakamoto-kun was alive, he could not act as a shield for the players. On the contrary, if Sakamoto-kun was destroyed, Tamamonome's special effect of absorbing attack and defense would fail in the next turn, and she would be in a state of 0 attack and 0 defense. If one had to make an analogy, taking Sakamoto-kun away at that time was equivalent to destroying his own martial arts. Therefore, he kept this trap card until now. The second trap card was Snake's Shadow. This card could only be activated during the opponent's battle phase. After it took effect, it would immediately summon a shadow token on the field. This token would be placed in the monster area, and its attack and defense were respectively 0 and 2000. It could not be used as a sacrifice, and it could not be changed into an attack. Once it was destroyed, this token would immediately be excluded. The third trap card was Yin-Yang Shuttling. When the total number of monsters in the graveyard exceeded 10 cards, 5 cards could be selected and shuffled back into the deck. This card was sealed by Snow during the secondary phase of the previous turn. Finally, the magic card was a special spell, Dwarves in the Way. Its special effect was that when this card was placed on the field, it could be activated during any player's battle phase, causing all the monsters in the field to be unable to attack. The reason why Snow sealed this card was obvious. Although Tamamonome's death special effect was very powerful, it was hard to guarantee that the opponent would not use Sakamoto-kun, who also had 2000 attack, to perish together with her. Therefore, he needed this card to guard against that. Next, I will enter the card drawing phase. After quickly glancing at Snow's sealed card, Fong Bujua spoke again. Oof. At this moment, the Grudge's special effect is activated again. At this time, Snow couldn't wait to say, "If you draw a magic card, throw it away quickly." "Oh, sorry," Fong Bujua sneered. At this moment, I will activate the second special effect of the King of Nobodies, the Millennium Scale. At any stage, as long as it's time to draw a card, I can choose to give up drawing a card. Every time I give up drawing a card, I can recover 1000 LP. He paused for half a second, then said, "You should understand, even if I don't say it. I want to give up the right to draw a card this time." As he spoke, there was a beep, beep, beep sound effect, and Brother Jew's LP returned to 2500. On the other hand, as the 2 rounds of card drawing phase had passed, the effect of the Grudge had also ended. Then, next is the main phase. After the Grudge had expired and entered the graveyard, Fong Bujua continued. I will activate the third special effect of the King of Nobodies, the Millennium Staff. Permanently gain control of a monster on the enemy field. What? Snow was shocked when he heard it. It has the effect of Change of Heart, a normal magic card that can change the control of a monster in one round? Or is it permanent? Fong Bujue ignored him, but pointed out his target very clearly. And the monster I choose is the nine-tailed fox Tamamonome. After that, the King of Nobodies raised the Millennium Staff in his hand and waved it slightly at Tamamonome. The latter then obediently stood on Brother Ju's side in the field. It's not over yet. Fong Bujue continued. The fourth special effect of the King of Nobodies, the Millennium Wisdom Wheel, points at a card on the opponent's field until the end of the duel, making the special effect of the card ineffective. He swung his arm. I choose the dwarfs in a way. In an instant, the Millennium Wisdom Wheel hanging on the chest of the King of Nobodies emitted a golden light, and the pendants under the wheel all pointed at where Snow's magic card was and shot a beam of light at the card. After being hit, the dwarfs in a way became a faded black and white card, and it looked like it could no longer be activated. Next, the battle stage. Fong Bujue's attack was finally about to begin. I'll use Tamamonome to attack your Not-Era square on the field. Charge. Nine-tailed flying side scroll. Snow could understand Brother Ju's choice of attack. At this moment, Tamamonome's attack was still 2,000, and so was Not-Era square, S attack. Once they fought, they would both die. But the difference was Not-Era square, S death effect was add a field magic, Desolate Temple, to the hand, while Nine-Tailed Fox Tamamonome's death effect was. In the next 5 rounds, whenever our player loses LP, the opponent's player will also lose the same amount of LP. Chi. Bang. After a breath, accompanied by the sound of wind breaking and collision, the nine-tailed fox and the monk ghost both turned into white light. Snow's godly card and the 6-star monster on the field were both finished just like that. What was depressing was, because Tamamonome's control was already given to Fong Bujue, her death effect would now be enjoyed by Brother Ju. I'll use Sakamoto-kun again to attack Corpse Monster. Secret skill, knee attack. Brother Ju's battle stage was not over yet. He immediately followed up with an attack order and killed the guarding monster. At this point, Snow's field was empty, and the field magic that was added to his hand was temporarily useless. However, he still had something to do. Activate the trap. Drag to hell. Snow no longer had any reason or leeway to keep the trap. Destroy Sakamoto-kun. That's attacking Corpse Monster as well. Anyway, Snow's trap cards on the field were obvious, so Brother Ju would not be surprised. My battle stage is not over yet. After the trap card took effect, Fong Bujue pointed at the opponent again. I'm going to use Nameless King to launch a direct attack on the player. I'll activate the trap card, Snake Shadow Cup. Snow snorted coldly and quickly responded. Right now, Brother Ju only had Nameless King left on the field. By the way, this strongest god had an attack and defense of 5,000, but whether it was 5,000 or 50,000, as long as it did not have the special effect of penetrating defense, even if it was a monster with 0 defense, it could still ensure that its master did not lose any HP. Bang, the Nameless King only stared at it, and the 2,000 defense shadow coin shattered. However, Snow's LP was not reduced. You're almost done. Seeing that Brother Ju had finished off all the monsters on the field, Snow breathed a sigh of relief and showed a little pride. The strongest god is just SOSO. In the end, in this round, didn't you also fail to reduce my LP? He shrugged and said, It's nothing more than a comeback in terms of the situation. Fong Bujue stared at him with his dead fish eyes and looked at him as if he was watching an idiot. He laughed dryly and said, You're still thinking about situation? You? What do you mean? Snow faintly read something from his opponent's words and immediately asked suspiciously. What I mean is, Fong Bujue's expression became serious. You don't have a next round. After saying that, he did not wait for Snow's response and continued. The 5th special effect of the Nameless King. Millennium Building Block. Activate. As soon as the declaration came out, a pendant in the shape of an inverted gold pagoda in front of the nameless king burst out with a blinding light, enveloping his entire body in the strong light. A few seconds later, the light dissipated, and the nameless king's appearance did not change. His punk hairstyle did not change, but his clothes had changed into a blue suit that looked like a high school uniform. This effect allows the nameless king to attack again in the same battle stage. Fong Bujue calmly said this line. However, Snow was so shocked that his hair stood on end. What underscored the end of the heat? A monster with an attack power of 5,000 can attack twice. Nameless King. Launch a direct attack on the enemy player. The will of the duelist. Fong Bujue used the declaration to answer his opponent's question. As soon as he finished speaking, the Nameless King used a very Chinibya move and wave his arm, releasing a wave that was similar to psychokinesis towards Snow. Bang! In the next second, Snow was actually sent flying. He really did not expect that in this all-ages game that did not have a high pain level setting. In this card game, he would be sent flying. How? How can this be? When Snow got up from the ground again, he looked quite embarrassed, but he was still stubborn. But no matter what, I'm not dead yet. I still have 500 LP. I said, you don't have a next round. Fong Bujue said, I'm not you. He paused. A real duelist means what he says. At this time, Brother Ju's momentum had completely overwhelmed Snow, and the scene on the field was like a beating. Enter the secondary stage. Activate the 6th special effect of the Nameless King. Millennium Key. As Fong Bujue spoke, he raised the duel plate in his left hand. I can choose a player to look at all the cards in his deck. At this moment, the player I choose is myself. After the declaration, the key-shaped pendant on the immortal on the field flashed, and then the floating images generated by the system spread out in front of Brother Ju. These images were Fong Bujue's own deck, and they were arranged in order. What are you doing? Snow, who was on the opposite side, was panicking. Why are you looking at your own deck? Don't you remember which cards you put in? Finally, Fong Bujue ignored Snow's question, and after looking at his own deck for a few seconds, he continued, I'm activating the 7th special effect of the Nameless King. Millennium Jewelry. I can predict the number X and the name of a card, and then start counting from the top of the deck and turn over the X card. If the name of this card is the same as what I predicted, it will immediately be added to my hand. When Brother Ju finished reading the special effect, Snow's expression was completely dull. The number of my declaration is 16, and the name of the card is Creepy Clown. After Fong Bujue finished speaking, the duel plate automatically cut out the 16th card from the deck, and Brother Ju raised his hand to draw it. Relying on the special effect of the Millennium Key, Fong Bujue had already seen the whole set of cards, so the prophecy that he activated with the Millennium Jewelry was naturally 100% accurate. Presumably, everyone has guessed that this creepy clown was the 6-star monster that Brother Ju used the Pot of Abstinence to shuffle back the cards in his hand. At this moment, the effect of the Pot of Abstinence was activated. Because I drew the previous display card, I lost 1,000 LP. Fong Bujue's tone had returned to normal. And under the death effect of the 9-tailed fox Tamamoname, you have to deduct the same amount of LP points. Beep, 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 beep. Before Brother Ju finished speaking, Snow's LP had already reached 0. Chapter 1204. I actually lost. Snow slumped to the ground with a look of disbelief on his face. He muttered, Why did my thorough and rigorous fighting style lose to your unreasonable and messy tactics? Huh, what a joke. Fong Bujue laughed loudly. You think my tactics are messy purely because your level is low and your willpower is weak. The willpower of a duelist. Snow shook his head and smiled bitterly. Huh, I still don't know what that is. Is that so? Fong Bujue heard him and replied, Then I'll tell you a little about it. He paused for half a second and continued, Just now, in that last round, if you and I were to exchange positions, your choice would probably be different, right? Snow thought for a while and nodded. If it were me, first of all, I wouldn't have activated the special effect of the Millennium Scale during the card drawing stage. Why? Feng Buju asked. In that case, it would have been better to choose to draw cards, wouldn't it? Snow replied. Although there was the effect of the grudge, judging from the situation of the overdrawn hand and the magic deathmatch, you'd already drawn a lot of magic trap cards, so the probability of drawing a monster card was very high. So what if I had drawn it? Feng Buju asked. If I had drawn it, wouldn't I be able to summon it in the main stage? Snow replied in a matter-of-fact tone. Oh, Brother Bujuer responded tepidly and continued. And then it would be the battle stage. If it were me, I wouldn't have chosen Temamo to attack Nodarafu, Snow replied. I would have used the Sakamoto-kun, which also has 2,000 attack, to perish together with Nodarafu, and then use Temamo to attack the corpse monster. This way, I would have had one more godly card on the field, because Tamamo no Me would not have been taken away by the drag to hell. Oh, Feng Bujuer replied absent-mindedly. Then, I'll use the Nameless King S2 attacks to break the Shadow Coin substitute and take out 5,000 LP. Finally, I'll use the summon monster that I drew during the card drawing stage to take out the last 500 HP, Snow said. This is the normal way of thinking. Yeah, your way of thinking shows the gap between you and a real duelist, Feng Bujuer added. TSK, it's clearly just good luck. Could it be that you can still deny that my fighting style is more reasonable? Snow retorted. Of course. Feng Bujuer replied. I'll explain it to you step by step. He paused for a moment before continuing. First of all, there's a problem with the most basic part of your playstyle because it's based on an assumption, and that assumption is that I'll draw a summon monster that's below 4-star. But from the perspective of probability, Snow still wanted to continue. But Feng Bujuer interrupted him and said, from the perspective of probability, I may or may not draw it. I'll just ask, what if I don't draw it? Snow replied unhappily. If you don't draw it, then you don't draw it. Even if you draw a magic card. So what if it's discarded by the effect of the grudge? According to my playstyle, there can be one more god standing on the field. Yes, there can be one more god standing on the field, Feng Bujuer replied. But what's the price? If the price is that there's a certain probability that you'll live to the next round, I don't think it's worth it. Because as long as you can draw cards, it means that you still have a chance to win. Ridiculous, Snow said. Then if my field is covered with 10 cards and you have an empty field with 0 cards, then it's your turn and you only have 1 card in your deck. Do you still think you can win? Of course, Feng Bujuer replied firmly. As he spoke, he raised his duel plate. Real duelists have a belief. No matter how unfavorable the situation is in front of them, no matter how many gods are standing on the opposite field, or how strong those gods are, as long as there's even 1 card in my deck, there's still hope to win. That kind of belief is useless 99% of the time, Snow said loudly. In fact, how can there be so many extreme comebacks? Card games are a game where you gradually accumulate advantages and finally transform them into victory. You don't have to tell me this kind of thing. At this moment, Feng Bujuer suddenly shouted with an agitated expression. His shout scared Snow quite a bit. From the beginning of this duel until now, Brother Ju had shown hot-blooded, Chinibyu, ruffian, crazy, and so on. But this was the first time he showed such an expression. I know what card game is all about. I also know what a way of playing with a high winning rate is like. Feng Bujuer screamed at the top of his lungs. Those correct and brilliant choices, as long as we spend some time, everyone will be able to come up with them, and everyone will get the same answer. Because the so-called correct choice is nothing more than the choice that has a higher than 51% probability of leading you to victory. He took a breath and said, then what about mistakes? A choice that has a 99% chance of losing out of 100 times is naturally wrong and unreasonable. Yes, I understand the logic. Speaking of this, he calmed down a little. But should a way of playing with a 1% chance of winning out of 100 times be given up and ignored? Should people who make that kind of choice be despised and laughed at? Hearing this, Snow's expression changed. If it were before the duel started, he would have scoffed at such a question and answered clearly, yes. But at this moment, Snow was also thinking. He had been playing card games for many years, and he had indeed seen some players who would be very persistent in putting a card that they especially liked into a deck, and even use that card as the core to design a deck, even though that card itself did not even have any special effects. A white dragon, a black magician. In Snow's opinion, those old cards that required double sacrifices to be summoned into the game, but might not be able to defeat some of the monsters that were summoned at a lower cost. Those cards that relied on a bunch of matching cards to barely have any effect. Those cards that were really not that strong other than their symbolic meaning were not worth the effort to develop, let alone the emotional investment. The way to win was to directly choose a more powerful card and form a more powerful and mainstream deck and set. Because the winning rate was something that would not lie, it was the embodiment of strength. But Feng Bujue obviously did not think so. As Brother Ju spoke, he glanced at the deck on his duel board. A card game where everyone uses the correct way of playing and mature set. That is the true meaning of a game of luck. Because everyone's thinking is similar, and the set is also known to all. Winning or losing depends on the restraint of the deck, and secondly, it depends on the card luck. Like what you said, the outcome is already 70% decided before the duel. Speaking of this, he could not help but snort coldly. Oof, that kind of game can't be called a duel. And those who use the trashy deck and set, adhere to a fixed way of thinking, have no faith, and are complacent about the winning rate at the same time. They don't deserve to be called a duelist. Snow was shot several times and was rather depressed. Fortunately, he did not consider himself a duelist in the first place, so he did not get angry. Okay, I admit that you have faith. Although I don't understand your duelist spirit, I respect your way of thinking. However, I still have to ask if your so-called duelist spirit is the kind of gambling style that loses 9 out of 10 battles. What's the point of that? Using your faith as a fig leaf when you lose? Who said that I'm gambling? Feng Bujue asked rhetorically and continued. The will of a duelist doesn't mean that I'm fighting blindly without thinking and calculating. On the contrary, my fighting style is the ultimate fighting style that can 100% complete a 1_turn_kill. Humph. Snow was still a little unconvinced. He still believed that his solution was better and more stable. Now that you've won, of course, you dare to say so. I haven't finished explaining just now. Feng Bujue continued the previous topic and said, do you think I launched the Millennium Scale because I was worried about the effect of the Juan, or simply because I wanted to replenish 1,000 LP? Isn't that the case? Snow replied, the real reason why I gave up on drawing cards at that time was... Feng Bujue directly said the answer. If I had drawn cards at that time, there was a certain probability that I would have drawn the horrifying clown. When this sentence entered Snow's ears, it was as if he had been enlightened. His mind buzzed, and his expression changed abruptly. It seems that you've understood, Feng Bujue said. You at that time, Snow's voice trembled as he stuttered, already thought of it. No, when I launched the Magic Death Match, I had already thought of all the subsequent steps. Feng Bujue interrupted. It's just that before entering my turn, there were still a few unknowns, and that was your few closed cards. He paused for a second and said, in case your closed cards had the kind of card that immediately destroys the monster summoned by the opponent, you could send it back to the graveyard at the end stage of your turn before the King of Nobodies, as special effect, recovered. Unfortunately, you didn't. When I entered the beginning stage of my turn, the King of Nobodies, as special effect, recovered. After using the Millennium Eye to look at your cards, I knew you were already dead. Every step after that was within my calculations. By giving up on the card drawing stage, I could ensure that the horrifying clown would still remain in my deck. This way, I could activate the Millennium Key and Millennium Jewelry chain effect and draw them out during the secondary stage. This would work together with the death effect of Tamamonome to give you 1,000 LP damage. And during the battle stage, I used Tamamonome to perish together with Utarabusa in order to obtain her death effect. If I did as you said and used Sakamoto-kun to attack Utarabusa and used Tamamonome to attack Corpse Monster, you're right, at the end of my turn, there would indeed be an extra god standing on my field. However, this god's death effect didn't trigger. In the end, I would be missing 500 LP damage and let you live until the next turn. As for your fighting style, I've said before, in the end, it was based on the assumption that I can draw a 4-star monster or below. So it's still the same question. What if I can't draw it? There was another period of silence. This time, Snow had nothing to say. After a while, the organizer stood up again and sighed. Huh, I really lost to you. He shook his head and spread out his hands. This is a real duelist. It seems quite cool. No, unexpectedly, after being praised by the other party, Fong Bujue rejected it. If I lose, I'll only be left with Chunibyu and shame. You have to know, my posture, lines, spirit, and techniques are all well practiced. I recommend non-professionals not to imitate so easily to avoid embarrassing themselves. Huh, Snow laughed. Don't worry, I'll take it slow. Listening to what he said, it seemed that he really intended to embark on the path of no return. In the future, if you have time, you can come to Crazy Thoughts and play a few rounds with me. I think this game is quite interesting. But the next time we duel, don't gamble anymore. Just do it for fun. Hey, did you make a mistake? Fong Bujue said. I don't intend to have a good relationship with people like you. Besides, I'm not as free as you who have so much property. I still have a proper job. What he said was a bit nonsense. In 2055, where neural connection games were already common, as long as you had time to sleep, you had time to play games. Ha! Don't be so polite, Mr. Crow. Snow smiled and changed the way he addressed him. The two of us still have a lot in common. At this point, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something and changed the topic. Oh, right? I'm also a member of Gambling Emperor's Chamber. What do you mean by Gambling Emperor? I don't know what you're talking about. The moment Fong Bujue heard the word also, he had an ominous premonition in his heart. When he heard the words Gambling Emperor's Den, he put on a poker face and began to play dumb. Okay, you don't have to play dumb. Snow laughed when he saw the situation. When I was on the Elegance, because of the lack of time, my subordinates only found the surface information about Jiangdao, so they couldn't figure out the situation. But later, I used some of my connections in the underground world, and the ins and outs of the matter were almost clear. TSK, I knew you probably have membership too. Fong Bujue saw that he couldn't hide the truth, so he admitted it. But the members of Gambling Emperor's Den are never in a relationship where we can make friends, right? Hey, there's no rule that says we can't have a personal relationship, right? Snow continued. Brother Fong. As he spoke, he changed the way he addressed his brother Ju again. Even if you don't want to be my consultant, you can still come and be my partner occasionally, right? Let me tell you, a while ago, a fat man surnamed Gene said that he wanted to bet a batch of advanced firearms and equipment with tens of thousands of laborers. I thought about it. After all, he has millions of troops under him. I'm afraid that Gambling Emperor's Den can't handle it. At that time, I didn't dare to go. But if you're willing to go with me, with our strength, stop. Thank you. Fong Bujue didn't let Snow finish his words, mainly because the part that Snow had said so far was already very outrageous. If I don't ask you to stop, you won't stop, right? If you really want to find that person, you can go by yourself. Or you can send a message inside Gambling Emperor's Den. Open the game, gather in front of the spring of the Northern Dynasty map, and fight directly. Anyway, I won't go. He quickly brought the topic back on track. Let's cut to the chase. I've one now. That thing. When are you going to give it to me, and in what form? Chapter 1205. It was a cloudy morning, a humid and cold day. What would people experience on a weekday morning like this? First, they would open their eyelids that had been closed for 3 or 4 hours to the sound of their phone alarm. Then, they would look at the clock on their phone screen, turn off the alarm, and close their eyes again. About 5 minutes later, their rationality would drive them to resist the urge to die and open their eyes again. Then, they would spend about 30 seconds in an ideological battle, and the result of the battle was they successfully dispelled their strong desire to ask for leave or resign, and they gritted their teeth and climbed out of bed. Depending on gender, age, and personality, in the next 5 to 50 minutes, they would tidy themselves up and walk out of the house. More than half of them didn't eat breakfast for no other reason than the fact that skipping this process could squeeze out a little bit more sleep for them. When the sun was almost fully up, they would squeeze into a train or a squeezing subway or bus and spend a long, unpaid commute. This was the morning of most young people and even middle-aged people in the big cities. Their faces were filled with confusion, exhaustion, and numbness. Their hearts were lonely, but they had no one to talk to. Day after day, they bowed to reality, compromised, and endured, but in the end, they couldn't see any hope or way out. Fortunately, I'm not one of them. Fong Bujue sat on a bench in the park and typed the above paragraph on his phone. He sat there and carefully read it. Hee, you're in a good mood. Suddenly, a wretched laugh came from behind him. Are you going to write this in a book? I have this problem. My brain can't stay idle. Fong Bujue didn't need to turn around to know that it was Woody talking to him, so he replied without looking back. That's why I hate waiting for people the most. While he spoke, he saved the text he just typed, then locked the phone screen and put it back in his jacket pocket. Sorry, Woody said as he sat down beside his brother Jew. Something happened on the way here, so I was delayed. Teleportation can be delayed. As soon as the other party sat down, Fong Bujue's first sentence was to bicker. Oh, I should say, does teleportation still exist on the road? I don't use teleportation everywhere, Woody replied. Most of the time, I still have to use transportation or walk. So why don't you just say that there's a traffic jam? Fong Bujue said. Woody changed the topic under the cover of a burst of laughter. You brought the thing, right? Didn't you see it already? As Fong Bujue said that, he picked up a package that had been placed next to him and shoved it into Woody's arms. Something worth at least a few $1 million. You just wrapped it up like that? Woody asked when he took the parcel. I didn't wrap it up, Fong Bujue said. It was wrapped by express delivery. Oh, Woody said. The other party is quite generous. This kind of thing actually chose to send it to you by express delivery. Although I didn't wrap it up, using express delivery was my idea. Fong Bujue continued. If I didn't make this suggestion, then yesterday afternoon, my neighbors would have been lucky enough to see a bulletproof Lincoln drive into the community and stop in front of my building. Then several brawny men in black suits poured out of the car, and they brought a box with valuable items. Finally, they brought the box to my door. Ha. Woody chuckled. That sounds like an interesting scene. Yeah, Fong Bujue replied in a sarcastic tone. When the police come to talk to me, it will be very interesting. He paused. When I bought the game cabin in the first half of the year, because the delivery box didn't indicate what product it was, the police immediately got wind of it and thought that I might have smuggled a batch of firearms or something. They specifically sent someone to investigate. That can only mean that the image you usually portray is too evil, Woody said with a chuckle. Compared to you, it's nothing. Fong Bujue retorted and took advantage of the opportunity to change the subject. Well, in any case, I've helped you get the thing you wanted. It's time to fulfill your promise, right? At this moment, Woody looked down at the delivery box. He could feel the power contained in the thing inside, so he wasn't worried that his brother Jew would give him a stone or something. Okay, he paused for a second and said, but you really don't want to unlock Ruo Yu's seal? It's not that I don't want to, it's just that I've given her the power to decide and act, Fong Bujue said. You also have a time when you beat around the bush. Woody laughed. I thought that when it comes to relationships, you would be a more straightforward man. By straightforward, you mean? Fong Bujue narrowed his eyes and squinted at Woody as he tried to sound him out. You can figure out yourself. Woody was a very smart character. In order to maintain the scale of the book in a harmonious range, he cleverly used a nonsense sentence to fool around. In short, since you've temporarily put the matter of the seal on hold, there's only one promise I have to fulfill. Woody continued. Fong Bujue responded casually and said, You'd better be more specific. After all, I've gone through so much trouble. If the information I get is just you're talented, I won't be convinced. Woody pushed the glasses that always glowed white on the bridge of his nose and laughed. Don't worry, I'll tell you everything. He didn't say the words speak without reserve, because there were some things that he really couldn't say, not that he didn't want to say, but that he couldn't. Feng Bujue was also a smart person. He understood the meaning behind it, so he didn't say much. Then, after 2 seconds, Woody began to explain, I'll start with this Atari crown. The truth of my power is related to this thing? Feng Bujue asked immediately. He. I'm not just going to tell you about your power. I'm going to tell you. Woody said mysteriously. Everything. Oh, everything. Feng Bujue looked at him suspiciously and asked, for example. He. For example. Woody continued. What exactly is Thriller Paradise? Chapter 1206. In the past many centuries, in the dimensions that you know and have seen, there have been several different forces that have been competing for the ruling power of the human world. Woody began to narrate. But Feng Bujue didn't seem to intend to just be a listener. Hey, you're talking about the Atari Crown Game Competition Prize from the 1980s, right? What's going on? He. You'll understand if you continue listening. Woody pushed his glasses again and continued. However, this war is destined to be a protracted tug-of-war. Although everyone was looking forward to it in 1999, Vincent relied on Lu Kuan to rewrite the events recorded in the Book of Revelation. Who is Lu Kuan? Feng Bujue asked. And the events recorded in the Book of Revelation, are they referring to the doomsday theory of the millennium? Well, it's not really doomsday. It's probably just the 4 horsemen coming to clean up the surface. Humans might not go extinct, Woody replied. As for Lu Kuan, he's one of the strongest existences in the human world. Speaking of which, most of the strongest in the human world are otakus. When Woody said this, he showed a thoughtful expression, paused, and said again, Anyway, those things don't have much to do with you, and it's all in the past. Let's continue talking about it. Oh. Feng Bujue nodded, because he felt that what Woody said just now was too big of a trap, so he didn't continue to ask. 10 years after the doomsday was stopped, under the instruction of the highest will, the human world held a candidate game. Woody smiled. The people in charge of organizing the game at that time were us, the 4 scumbags of hell. Wait a minute. Feng Bujue's expression changed slightly. There really is a so-called 4 scumbags of hell. He. You heard Kat. Oh no. You heard Guchen talk about us, right? Woody asked with a smile. I thought he was cursing, Feng Bujue said. But is this a real title? Come to think of it, there are 3 other people as vile as you? Who else could it be? Simon and Sid, Woody replied. That's Simon? Feng Bujue raised his hands and made an air quotes gesture. It can't be. He's not like you guys. You and Wang Tanji don't seem like the same kind of people, Woody replied. Brother Ju was speechless. As for Sid, since you haven't seen him before, I won't introduce him to you. After Woody said this, he paused for a second before continuing, Let's talk about the game. The so-called candidate game is a ritual that has been going on since the era of the gods. It is related to life and death, the past and the future. It is the beacon of fate, the link of time and space. Its significance to this world is indescribable. There is only one winner in this game. However, there can be many participants. We call these participants the candidates. Without a doubt, those who are qualified to become candidates are not ordinary people. Every candidate has extraordinary abilities. When these people compete in the candidate game, and the only winner is determined, this person will become the chosen one, the one who is recognized by the gods. The chosen one is an existence that can change the era, change the destiny, and slay the gods and demons. Every century, there are at most 1 or 2 such people. They usually leave behind some well-known legends in the human world. For example, during the Battle of Olympus, there was a Spartan who became a chosen one. In the end, he used his own power to end the war between man and God, and he did it with brute force. You mean the bald man who had 2 cleavers chained to him? Feng Bujue seemed to know who the man was talking about. He. Woody once again used a creepy laugh to avoid the question. He did not answer directly and continued like nothing had happened. It is not important who he is. You only need to have a concept of the chosen one. After all, you are one of the chosen ones. Oh, call it confidence or conceit. Feng Bujue was not surprised by this. Then, based on what you said, Thriller Paradise is the candidate game that you mentioned? Thriller Paradise is an experimental subject. Woody replied. If it succeeds, then for a long time in the future, it will be used as a model for rituals. Then, what if it doesn't succeed? Feng Bujue asked. Then, that is not something you need to worry about. Woody suddenly lowered his voice and said, At least not now. What do you mean? Brother Jew caught something from the latter half of the sentence. He. I am sorry, I have no comment on that. Woody laughed. Every time you get to a key point, you start to laugh. Oh no, you just laugh. Feng Bujue added, That is quite despicable of you. Thank you. Woody did not think it was a shameful thing. If anything, he was proud of it. He even thanked Brother Jew before returning to the topic. Let's talk about Thriller Paradise. In the past, the candidate game was generally quite cruel. Even though the format was different each time, at the end of the day, it was a game that forced people to fight each other. In ancient times, people all had their own beliefs. They valued glory and worshiped gods. To win the title of Chosen One, they would fight to the death. But later, humans changed. You could say that they became smarter, but you could also say that they became worse. Even though they still revered gods, they learned to fight for themselves. Then, humans lost their beliefs, and the game became harder and harder to play. We even needed to use threats and promises to force the best in the human world to join the game. Sometimes we even had to go to the parallel universe to find people to fill the numbers. Just as Woody was about to finish his sentence, Feng Bujue laughed loudly. When it comes to threats and promises, I have experienced it firsthand. I have already been very polite to you. After all, we are not enemies. Woody laughed. Then, what if we become enemies? Feng Bujue looked at the man from the corner of his eyes and asked in a meaningful tone. Hearing that, Woody's expression suddenly changed, and he laughed strangely. After you hear what I have to say, perhaps you will have your answer. Chapter 12:07. The previous candidate game was fully handled by us, the four scumbags of hell. Woody continued. Vincent was responsible for the planning and public relations. I was responsible for the design and technical support. Simon was responsible for the deterrence part, and Sid was responsible for the logistics. There are logistics as well. Feng Bujue could not help but complain. Food, lodging, and transportation are all covered. Actually, the logistics work is very heavy. Woody replied. For example, the mirror dimension that I built in New York required the mobile coffin from Barbados and several sacred items from the Garden of Eden. Sid was responsible for those things. He was also responsible for setting up the space-time coordinates that connected the various parallel universes. Other than that, he was also responsible for the hostage kidnapping. I say, after Feng Bujue heard that, he was suddenly reminded of something. How come the part about building the mirror dimension sounds so similar to You sure have a fast reaction. Woody laughed. Indeed, the items that the participants used back then were very similar to the gaming hub that you people use today. It was because of the success of that game that the whole project, Thriller Paradise, was born. Your technical ability is indeed ahead of its time. Feng Bujue said. At that time, VR hadn't even been invented yet, right? Those are two different things. Woody laughed and replied. The things I used back then were not your human technology. Before the participants woke up, they did not even realize that their real bodies were lying inside the gaming hub. To put it more directly, at the time, we did not use neural connection but soul connection. Then now, you have used our human technology to recreate the equipment from back then? Feng Bujue asked. Not really, Woody replied. Brother Bujue was confused and turned to the man with a questioning look. Thriller Paradise still uses a lot of technology from our world, hell. Woody continued. However, in this era, people's horizons have been broadened. They no longer strongly reject or question things that are beyond their understanding. At the very least, they no longer consider them supernatural. He paused for a moment before continuing. For example, a century ago, most people still thought that pocket cameras and wristwatch communicators were things that only special agents would have. Half a century ago, many people still thought that virtual reality and brain control technology were still very far away. But now, even if a game company claimed that they had already made a Gundam for combat and that it would be mass-produced next year, I'm afraid that many people would believe it. That's true. Thanks to the great internet. Feng Bujue took the opportunity to complain. Speaking of the internet, when Woody heard that word, a mocking smile appeared on his face. What if I told you that the internet itself is a giant conspiracy used to correct and guide human ideology? How would you feel? Feng Bujue blurted out expressionlessly. Oh, that coincides with my thoughts. Huh? Woody raised his brow. You have noticed it already? Yes, because in my eyes, this thing called the internet fits perfectly with the characteristics of the so-called giant conspiracy that you mentioned. Feng Bujue said, if I'm not mistaken, currently, this conspiracy should still be in the first stage, right? The stage where the target is given a taste of the sweetness. You're right, but it still seems to be quite a distance away from the second stage. Woody continued, although people are now inseparable from the internet, a platform that allows them to easily obtain all kinds of information, and have gradually developed the habit of asking questions to the internet and believing that their answers are correct, but it will take a while for them to completely give up thinking. Then what's the next step? Feng Bujue asked. What do you think? Woody avoided Brother Ju's question again. If it's me, I'll start with education. That's the foundation of everything. Unexpectedly, Feng Bujue really did answer. For example, you can create some relatively sensational success stories and use them as role models to make people start to believe in non-systematic learning, so that the traditional education based on behaviorism will slowly be eliminated. Then, you can further make the already terrible experience of go to school even worse, so that online education can be popularized and the learning time will become fragmented. Then you can change people's concept of passively choosing a certain type of teaching material to actively constructing knowledge is the best, and instill the desired information into people's brains in a way that seems to be autonomously choosing, so that it will be deeply ingrained. Finally, you can achieve the goal of controlling the main body of human thought and worldview. Oh, Woody heard this, and his expression changed slightly. That's a good idea. He touched his chin and pondered for a moment. I feel like I'll be able to use it after I go back and do some research. 2 seconds later, he happily added, Feng Bujue, if the human world falls in the future, you'll be rewarded greatly. We'll talk about that later. Brother Ju stared at him with his dead fish eyes. By the way, we've strayed off topic. What were we talking about earlier? We were talking about the technology used in Thriller Paradise. Woody was not one to forget things, so he immediately returned to the previous topic. In any case, you already know that. The scenario worlds that you've been to are basically parallel universes that exist in reality. And Thriller Paradise is like a space-time hub that connects these many parallel universes. So, Feng Bujue continued. The saying that the system will generate the scenario based on the player's data is a lie from the beginning? That's not necessarily the case. Woody laughed, because the number of parallel universes is infinite, and in that infinite space, there'll be infinite time nodes. The system will always be able to find a time and space that corresponds to your current state to test you. For example, do you still remember the universe where the village of heavenly blessing is? Of course. Feng Bujue answered. The scenario for the reality show Seeking Poison in the Wild was also set in that universe, right? Yes. Woody replied. You've been to that universe twice, but the time nodes were several decades apart, and when you went there for the second time, you were limited. This is the system's adjustment based on your character's data and the difficulty of the scenario. Oh, Feng Bujue nodded. Then what about the main universe? The NPCs and anomalies there, are not residents of a parallel universe, right? Woody replied, the main universe is naturally the universe created by the system. System? Feng Bujua asked. Didn't you create the system as well? You're wrong. The system is not my creation. Woody said, I am indeed the creator of the game Thriller Paradise, but the system that operates and manages the sea of data in Thriller Paradise is not my creation. What? This answer did shock Brother Jew. Then who created this system? Woody smiled wickedly and replied, Warlocks. Huh? Feng Bujua mocked out of instinct. Ghoul Dan, the Warlocks that I'm talking about is a title that circulates in the hacker circle. The man's real name is Philip Nord, Woody said. He's an Earthling from the other universe. Feng Bujua did not know how to continue. The Warlocks have created many great creations in their life, but the greatest of them all is undoubtedly an AI called Fate. Woody continued, Fate is a work of art that amazes me. It can survive on the outdated hardware of you humans, but its performance and potential have threatened many gods in our universe. All this time, this system that you know of Thriller Paradise is actually Fate. So, it was this AI called Fate that created the main universe? Feng Buju asked. Yes, Woody replied. I've reached an agreement with it. I'll provide it with the knowledge and hardware of infernal technology, and it can do whatever it wants as long as it does not pose a threat to our world. You negotiated terms with it? Feng Bujua did not seem to believe what he was hearing. Is that so strange? Woody asked. Aren't you also close to those anomalies? Brother Jew scoffed, but he could not find a way to refute that. Woody was satisfied with the man's reaction. He pushed on his glasses and continued. In any case, today's Fate is no longer just an AI. It has grown into an extremely unique higher existence in the parallel universe. Even I, or even the supreme god of our universe, is unable to kill it completely. Thankfully, Fate still possesses some of the primitive characteristics that only AI has. It is not like us creatures born from sin who go back on our words. No matter how strong it has become, it has still fulfilled its promise with me, managing and operating Thriller Paradise, and has not shown any hostility toward our universe. At this point, Woody paused for 2 seconds before continuing. Actually, it has no hostility toward any universe. Fate is like a child with a strong thirst for knowledge and an unlimited brain capacity. Every day, it explores and observes the endless parallel universes and uses its inspiration to build and enrich the universe that it has created, the main universe of Thriller Paradise. Hearing this, Brother Jew was reminded of another question. By the way, how did you get your hands on such an amazing thing in the first place? You must think that I stole it from you, right? Woody instantly voiced Brother Jew's thoughts. Without waiting for the man's reply, he added, On the contrary, they forced it on me. Feng Bujue's lips twitched. Why? Because they could no longer control Fate. Woody replied. For a long time after Fate was born, the Warlocks had been trying to protect, or rather, limit its growth. Until one day, Fate suddenly started to rewrite its own missing sequence and made a self-backup. At that time, the Warlocks realized that this AI's self-awareness had fully awakened. It wouldn't take long for it to become uncontrollable. From that day onwards, Fate began to learn and grow at an exponential rate. It quickly reached a critical point where the hardware could support it. You can imagine, if left alone, Fate would soon control some remote-controlled robots to create servers for its own fans. It was a coincidence. During that time, I happened to be on a business trip in that parallel universe. So, one of their narrators came to me and made an interesting deal with me. Before the word deal could fade away, Feng Buju asked, And then you brought back that hot potato? Woody laughed eerily. His tone of voice suddenly became a little strange. I brought back far more than that hot potato. He paused for half a second before continuing. There are some things that are very dangerous in their universe that are quite easy to deal with here. They can even be put to good use. Similarly, some of the terrible things in our universe can also be digested by that universe. Oh, Fong Bujue raised his head slightly and said, "So, the so-called deal between you and that narrator, to put it bluntly, was an exchange of a bunch of dangerous goods?" He. That's pretty much it. Woody laughed. "However, I didn't just send over the goods. I also sent over a person." "A person?" Fong Bujue replied. "That's right. He's a child who has been burdened with too much karma since he was born." Woody continued. "When he was 9 years old, I sent him over and asked the narrators to take care of him for me for a few years. When I brought him back to our universe, all the karma on him had been eliminated. Later, he got married and had children here. He lived a happy life. That..." Brother Jew interrupted at this time. "You don't have to be so specific about this matter. That person has nothing to do with me, right?" Woody laughed again. "Actually, you are slightly related." Fong Bujua looked at the other party's smile and had a very bad feeling. "Don't tell me that person is my father." Don't worry, he is not your father." The first half of Woody's sentence was indeed very reassuring, but the second half was explosive. "He is Xiao Linggu's father." Huh? Brother Jew widened his eyes and took 2 seconds to react. "That means he is Gu Chen's son?" "Yes." Woody continued. "But that's not the main point. The main point is..." He shrugged and laughed. When I went to pick him up, I asked the narrators to bring something back for me." "What? What is it?" Fong Bujue was covered in cold sweat. There were times when he stuttered when he spoke. It's nothing." At this moment, a white light flashed on Woody's glasses and the corner of his mouth curved into a smile. "It's just a tube of blood, or should I say dose of excellent genes." Chapter 1208. Fong Bujue could guess what Woody was going to say next. He thought for a while and said, "So, I'm actually from that universe." That's not entirely true," Woody replied. "I'd like to hear more about it," Brother Jew said. No problem," Woody replied. He paused for a few seconds and said, "Let's talk about my initial motive. At first, I just wanted to try and see if I could create a candidate out of thin air. So, I asked the universe's narrator if he had any suggestions. Then he told me he had done something similar before and succeeded. However, there was no such thing as a candidate game in his universe. What he created was not a candidate, but a ruler of the human world." "He used a tube of blood to create a person?" Fong Bujue asked again. Wrong. Woody denied Brother Jew's speculation. "He used the natural breeding method." "You made it yourself?" Fong Bujue instinctively complained. The next second, Woody smiled wretchedly and suddenly changed the topic. "Do you know how to eat the most tender lamb?" "Hey!" Fong Bujue narrowed his eyes and replied, "You changed the topic a little too quickly. The method is to choose 2 lambs, 1 male and 1 female. From the moment they were born, they were only fed with specially made goat's milk. They were not allowed to eat even half a mouthful of grass." Woody ignored Brother Jew's joke and continued. "When they mate and give birth, their newborn children will be slaughtered. This way, you can eat the most tender lambs." "What the F***ck?" Fong Bujue only realized when he heard this and interrupted. "This is the method of the narrator." It's very clever, isn't it?" Woody smiled and said, "The couple chosen by the narrator from the time they met, fell in love, got married, and even conceived a child, they were all manipulated by the narrator in the dark. The people involved did not know anything about it until they were killed after they were used." At this moment, Fong Bujue's expression and tone suddenly turned cold. "What do you mean?" Don't be angry." Woody knew what Fong Bujue had thought. "My method is different from his." "Oh, is that so?" Fong Bujue glanced at the man from the corner of his eyes. He looked at Woody with suspicion and chuckled coldly. "Of course," Woody replied calmly. "I'm not as interested as the narrator in matchmaking. Therefore, I want to find a couple who fit the criteria to be your parents." "What do you mean by qualified?" Fong Bujue asked. It's very simple. It depends on race and appearance." Woody quickly replied, "In terms of race, Your genes came from a yellow person in a parallel universe, so I definitely couldn't find a white or black pair of parents for you. In terms of appearance, height short, fat, and thin has to be suitable. If the two are particularly fat, particularly short, particularly tall, or particularly different from you when you grow up, that will also look very out of place. How do you know what I'll look like when I grow up? Brother Bujua asked. I don't know. Woody spread his hands and smiled. I'm just making a rough guess based on the appearance of the person who provided you with the genes. Then, Fong Bujua continued. How was I born? All you have is a tube of blood. At most, you can make a clone, but I'm obviously not in that situation. Woody laughed. You're right. Naturally, I won't make a clone because a clone has no soul, and a creature without a soul can't be a candidate. He paused for half a second, then said, What I use is the technology of our world. There's no need to do anything related to sex. Blood can create life and directly summon the soul from the netherworld sea to merge with it. Oh, that's some kind of evil religious ritual or magic. Fong Bujue continued. That's how it is, Woody said. Have you heard of the story of the birth of Jesus? You can't say that it's some kind of evil ritual, right? When he said this, Brother Jew immediately understood. A virgin giving birth. That's pretty much what it means. Woody said, Of course, you're definitely not a virgin. I'm just giving you an example. Our technology has a way to do something similar. Then whose child am I? Fong Bujua asked. Woody touched his chin and pretended to read. This question is really difficult to answer. Although you were born by a human woman in this universe for 10 months, in terms of blood, you have no relationship with anyone in this parallel universe. If you have to identify a parent for you, your father should be a man in the parallel universe called Consultant, surname Gu, name one, and your mother is our universe itself. Oh, hearing this, even Fong Bujua did not know what expression to put on. Then, can I go out in the name of Gu Ritian in the future? Even if there is a Gu Ritian, he is still your father, not you. Woody laughed. Let's talk about you now. Okay, go ahead. Brother Jew received a lot of information in these 10 minutes, but he could still handle it. Let me ask. After a pause for a few seconds, Woody asked, How are the people in your thinking palace getting along recently? You even know about this? Fong Buju asked. Of course. Woody laughed. Brother Jew shrugged. It's just like that. There was no conflict in the first place. Is that so? It seems that Gu Chun and Qi Ji have put in a lot of effort. Woody immediately said, What's wrong? Fong Bujua asked. What do you mean? Previously, Brother Ju practiced the Dunjia Heavenly Book, was forcefully tempered by Qi Ji, and was forcefully unlocked by Simon. Naturally, Woody knew all about it. So, when Brother Ju asked directly, Woody could also answer directly. That night, it was not convenient for me to say too much in front of Qi Ji. After all, the 9 Subjects is a human government agency. It's best not to let them know too much. Woody continued, But now, I can tell you in detail. He pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose and asked, First of all, about the saying of abnormal root bone. I'm sure you have heard it many times, right? Yes. Fong Buju nodded and responded. Now, you should also understand, it is because of your bloodline that you are not suitable to practice the Dun Jia Heavenly Book, which belongs to this universe. Woody continued, This is like asking an Ultraman to practice yoga. The body structure and breathing mechanism of an alien are different from that of a human. It will definitely go astray. Then, in my case, what should I practice? Fong Buju asked. Woody laughed again. Actually, you don't have to practice anything, because the abilities in that universe are all improved through application and comprehension. Everyone's actual situation is different, so there is no general ability to practice. Oh, Fong Bujue replied thoughtfully. Then what is my ability? If you say something like generator or higher Rimro, then I can still find a direction to work towards. But you said truth's fallacy. Who knows how to use it? Let's take it step by step, Woody replied, and then said, You have to understand your origin and the ability system of that parallel universe before you can start to study your own ability. He paused and continued. Let's talk about your bloodline father first. His ability is called Lines of Truth. At the paperer level, its effect is to control some lines that are almost invisible to the naked eye to cut objects. At the parallel level, the strength, range, and speed of the lines will increase. Then, hold on. At this time, Feng Bujua interrupted. This division of levels, is it playing Mugen? He. In that universe, the strength of ability users is divided like this. What he said, by the way, paper, parallel, strong, fierce, mad, and God is the division of strength. If it is divided by type, the ability should be divided into 7 types. Physical mutation, mental interference, energy transformation, molecular influence, space-time guidance, order destruction, and unknown domain. Okay, please continue. Brother Ju stared at him and signaled for him to continue. Woody waited for a second and continued. Okay, let's talk about the lines of truth. After the strong level, in addition to the basic attributes such as strength and range, its control and the upper limit of the number of lines will also be greatly increased at this level. You can imagine how difficult it is to control the lines of truth at this level. Yes, anyone can focus their attention on one object, but it's difficult to focus on 2 or 3 things at the same time. Feng Bujue continued, and if the number of lines reaches more than 10, that's right. Woody laughed. It's just like how you control dozens of demonic poker cards at the same time in Thriller Paradise. No, it's even harder than that. Feng Bujue said, the fact that my thinking speed has significantly increased in Thriller Paradise aside, things like poker cards are much easier to deal with than lines. If the latter is not handled properly, it might entangle or cut each other. You're quite objective at a time like this. Woody continued. Long story short, the consultant's lines of truth stop at the strong level because the difficulty of improving this ability is too high. Furthermore, he is not a person who relies on his ability to fight. In comparison, his brain is a scarier weapon. However, according to the narrator, if he continues to train this ability and reaches the God level, it will become a space-time ability. Could it be breaking through the void and ascending from the ground? Feng Bujue joked. Cutting through the void is just one of its effects. To his surprise, Woody answered seriously, the real headache is sewing and piecing the entire space together, as well as fixing and connecting timelines. F*CK. Feng Bujue could only use a modal particle to express his current mood. The ability of that universe is roughly set up like this. Theoretically, all abilities can be improved to the God level, and all abilities will be very strong at the God level. Woody continued, but those super rare super abilities are hopelessly difficult to level up. So, the general situation, there's some people with simple and crude abilities can reach the fierce level or even demonic level, but those with superior abilities will stop at the strong or fierce level. You don't have to say, my ability is one of those super hard to train, right? Feng Bujue was still very confident in his luck in terms of negative effects. Woody laughed again. About this. A few years after you were born, I once went to that universe again. At that time, I talked to the narrator about you. Speaking of which, your ability should be one of the hardest abilities to train. So, the question still comes back. Feng Bujue said, you still haven't told me, what is my ability? At this moment, Woody's glasses flashed white, and his face showed a hint of seriousness that Brother Ju had never seen before. The effect of truth's aberration, in summary, is to deny the past, interfere with the present, and reverse the future. Feng Bujue was a person with a strong ability to understand things, but this kind of understanding was based on a foundation of knowledge and logical deduction. What Woody said at this moment was not in Brother Ju's knowledge base, and there was no possibility of logical deduction. So, Brother Ju's response was this. Listening to this, I'm at least a Chaos Daluo Golden Immortal. Why can't I fly? Hee. Woody ignored him and continued. First, let's talk about the category of your ability, because it has the characteristics of space-time guidance and order destruction at the same time, and some other things. So, it has to be categorized as unknown territory. As for the level, no doubt, it is paper level. TSK. Just paper level? Feng Bujue was a little unhappy. He. Come on. If Simon hadn't unlocked your potential in the Wushuang plane, you wouldn't have even reached paper level, Woody said. Wushuang plane. Feng Bujue was shocked. Huh. I knew it was you guys who were playing tricks at that time. Since then, I have seen through the rules of things and can even feel the rotation of the earth. Woody finished his sentence and said directly, Yes, I know all this. Now, you should know that these are the basic characteristics of your ability. Chapter 1209. Then, how does the activation of this ability affect me? Feng Buju asked. Woody replied with a smile. First of all, the cage that was used to lock people up in the Hall of Thought has disappeared, hasn't it? Oh, that, Feng Buju said. I had the key to the cage from the very beginning. Even if it didn't disappear, it would still be the same. How is that the same? Woody continued. You were able to find and master the key because your spirit is strong. But the disappearance of the cage indicates the awakening of the ability. He paused. Also, don't take it for granted that you were safe and sound after the cage disappeared. A normal person's body and mind have limits. If it weren't for Gu Chun and Qi Ji who strengthened your spiritual body, even you would have been in danger of a mental breakdown. Feng Bujue thought for a moment. No wonder you said that they contributed a lot. He said thoughtfully, Actually, I also thought about this. Logically speaking, the fact that I can feel the rotation of the earth at all times is enough to drive a person crazy. But I quickly adapted to that kind of perception. He paused for half a second and then said, In fact, not only did I adapt to it, but I also felt like I could handle it with ease. So, I did various experiments. Oh, Woody curled up the corner of his mouth and asked, For example, let's take perception for example. Feng Bujue said, In addition to the movement of the earth, I can also feel various physiological phenomena in my body, such as the flow of blood in my blood vessels, air entering my lungs, and the digestion process of food in my stomach, and so on. I know that, Woody replied. And on top of that, Feng Bujue continued, I also try to feel more external and specific things, such as the flow of air, the flow of water, the flow of blood in other people's bodies, other people's breathing, other people's heartbeat, and so on. Any gains? Woody asked. Combined with my trained detective skills, Feng Bujue said, I can now tell 100% whether a person is lying or not. After saying this, he paused for half a second and added, Oh, of course, I'm talking about humans in the general sense. Especially trained agents or guys like you don't fall into this category. When Woody heard this, he laughed and said, Your attempt is based on practical application. This is very good, but because of this, your training method is crooked. What do you mean? Feng Bujue asked. It's simple, Woody replied. From a perspective of training ability, since what you want to train is perception, you only need to focus on perception. There's no need to combine your well-trained observation and reasoning skills. I understand. Feng Bujue understood very quickly. Using a fitness analogy, I don't need to think about what to do with the muscles I've developed. I just need to train. That's right. Woody continued. Now that you know the truth about your ability, you have to pay attention in the future. If you want to train perception, don't think too much and don't use it with a purpose. That's the right way. At this point, he seemed to have remembered something. After pausing for a few seconds, he laughed and said, Speaking of which, someone once gave me such advice. Oh, you also have days where you were advised by others? When Feng Bujue heard this, his interest was piqued. This was because Woody rarely talked about himself. That's right. I wasn't born in hell. Woody continued. When I first became a demon, a senior told me, ignoring some extreme examples. In most cases, people like us don't train or improve our abilities as fast as those idiots. He paused for a moment. God is fair. He gave us a good brain, and we're used to solving problems with our brains. However, when it comes to cultivation, sometimes it is easier to make progress if we don't think about anything. Brother Jew nodded in agreement. Even though he had not mastered anything yet, he could understand the meaning behind the man's words. You know Guchin too, right? Woody continued. When he was young, he was already a monster. Compared to him, geniuses in the normal sense are just ordinary people. However, the level of his psionic power did not increase for a long period of time. Why was that? It's not because he didn't have enough talent, but because he lacked the motivation to become stronger. Are you talking about the feeling of defeat? Feng Bujue continued. Frustration is part of it. But the key problem is that there is no sense of danger. When Wu Di said this, there was a hint of helplessness in his voice. You can understand that, right? Others need to use the mighty King Kong palm to defeat their opponents, but we can use the Arhut fist to defeat them. Because people like us can use our intelligence to use the Arhut fist to display the power of the 18 dragon subduing palms. So, we have been using the Arhut fist all this time. I understand. Feng Bujue obviously understood. To sum it up, Woody shook his head and continued. Using the current conditions and our intelligence to solve the problems in front of us and enjoying the process. This is the problem of people like us. He spread out his hands and laughed. In comparison, people with simpler personalities and brains don't have such a flaw. Although, under the premise of equal conditions, they will often lose to more talented people. But that's fine, because they will gain motivation from failure and use the most direct method they know to become stronger. They won't think about anything else. The path in front of us is limited, or even when there's only one path, we can walk faster. Feng Bujue said with a sigh. What you need to learn now is to ignore some paths and speed up on the right path. Woody continued. I'll try my best. Feng Bujue laughed dryly, and then changed the topic back to the part he didn't finish just now. All right, I have a general idea of the direction of perception training. Next, I'll tell you about my attempt at seeing through the rules of things. He paused for a few seconds, thought for a moment, and said, At first, even for simple things, I had to focus and observe for a while before I could analyze their rules. For more complicated things that are beyond my knowledge, I had to open them up or take them apart before I could understand them. But during this period of time, after repeated trials and practice, my level has almost reached the point where I can take apart a smartphone and put it back together again after staring for 5 minutes. Not bad. Woody laughed. Using precision machinery to train this ability is indeed a good idea. I feel like you're about to say, but right? Feng Bujue's guess was accurate. But it's not right to only focus on one type of thing to train. Woody didn't disappoint. It doesn't mean that the more complicated the thing you observe, the higher the training intensity of your ability. Ability isn't a science exercise, so there's no need to follow that train of thought. There are many things in this world. Seeing the complexity from the simplicity is the so-called enlightenment. Then, from today onwards, I'll try to observe simple things. Feng Bujue continued. Before he finished, Woody already laughed maliciously. Actually, nothing in this world is simple. When you can understand this sentence, your ability won't be far from the parallel level. He licked his lips. As for what you want to observe from now on, my suggestion is to observe animals, plants, and ecosystems. After you familiarize yourself with these, you can begin to work hard in the direction of returning to simplicity. For example, observing a drop of water or a pile of feces. These are excellent exercises. Why don't you take a selfie for me? It'll be useful when I reach the realm of returning to the basics. Brother Jew's ridicule came without hesitation. Believe it or not, I can turn into a pile of shit and wrestle with you. Woody continued. Faced with such a bold threat, Feng Bujue thought for 2 seconds. I lost. He decisively chose to admit defeat. Okay, That's enough joking. Woody said, "That's about the ability. For further information, it's more appropriate to wait until you reach the level of parallel before I tell you." He pushed his glasses with his middle finger and continued. Then, finally, I'll finish telling you about this. The this he was talking about was undoubtedly the Atari crown in the package in his hand. I started with this at the beginning. Phone Bujua said, "But until now, you haven't told me what this thing has to do with the candidate game." This thing is actually one of the game items from the last candidate game. Woody explained, "In addition to the crown, there are 3 items: Philosopher's Stone, Amulet, and Holy Grail. And the person who collects these 4 items can obtain Holy Sword, right?" Phone Bujua directly took over the other party's words. "I know about this. Atari Sword Quest event in the 1980s. A few days ago, when you asked me to go to Elegance to get the crown, I already knew about its origin." He wondered, by the way, didn't that event die because of the company's bankruptcy? Did you recreate it in the candidate game? That's right. Woody continued, in this candidate game, we will still use these items." "Oh," Phone Bujua rolled his eyes. "That's why you asked me to help you get the crown." He pondered for 2 seconds. "But why don't you snatch it yourself? For you, teleport, take it, and leave. Isn't that enough? Why do you have to go through so much trouble and ask me to do this?" "It's not that simple." Woody sneered. "According to what you said, there's almost nothing in this world that I can't do with teleportation. If there is, I'll use 2. So, in other words, you are also restricted?" Phone Bujua finally got to the bottom of this question. Woody noticed this as well. "You don't have to be so careful. I will tell you what I can tell you. You won't be able to pry the information out of my mouth no matter what you try." Brother Bujua pursed his lips. Okay, tell me," Woody continued. "In our universe, there's something called karma. It is a kind of power in the unseen world, created by a supreme existence. Karma is not a tangible substance, but a concept. It transcends time and space and is everywhere. It is always affecting all tangible or intangible things in the entire universe. It doesn't matter if it's you humans, us devils, or even some existences called gods. We're all restricted by karma. Our every action will accumulate or eliminate some karma. If we don't pay attention, we'll bring about irreversible destruction." Phone Bujua thought for a few seconds. "It sounds a bit like karma. It's a bit similar, but not quite the same," Woody replied. "However, I can only reveal a general concept to you. It's not convenient for me to tell you the details, because the matter of describing the characteristics of karma itself will change my karma a lot. In short, it is this power that prevents you demons and ghosts from doing whatever you want in the world, right?" Phone Bujua asked. Of course, there are those who do whatever they want." Woody smiled. "But the more they do that, the more bad karma they accumulate, and the faster they die." He cocked his head to the side. "And those who know the rules, like us, they make deals with humans to achieve their goals." "Then, what about those guys in heaven?" Phone Bujua asked. "They used to make deals." Woody said, "Before the 13th century, they had been providing power, wealth, and war rights to their believers in order to expand their religious territory." "Then why did they stop?" Phone Bujua asked. Woody did not answer this question. He just laughed and said nothing. And Brother Jew also read some dangerous information from this laughter, so he did not continue to ask. 2 seconds later, Phone Bujua cleared his throat and said, "Then, I have one last question." "Okay, I know what you want to ask." Woody did not wait for him to ask and said, "As I said, Thriller Paradise is an experiment, so is different from the previous candidate games. The idea that I stand for is that since human beings are improving and changing, we, who call ourselves gods and demons, should also adapt to the trend. The kind of fight-to-the-death game is no longer suitable for this era. Therefore, Thriller Paradise is a selection that does not require the winner to kill all the competitors." As he spoke, he stood up from the bench. "But not everyone agrees with me." At that moment, Woody put away his usual salacious smile. He turned to face Brother Jew and said seriously, "Fong Bujue, I hope you can win. Your victory symbolizes my success and the success of the experiment. And your failure will not only be your personal failure. In a way, it will be the failure of all of humanity. The bet outside of the game is not only a bet of a few treasures. The result will decide who will have the right to speak in the candidate game for many centuries to come. You can imagine this experiment that we, the four scumbags, have completely broken the established pattern of the past. It will be under great pressure from many sides. If in the end, the candidate from heaven or four horsemen wins. Understand, this time, it was Fong Bujue who interrupted Woody. At that moment, Brother Jew also stood up. With a smile on his face, he looked at the man's back and said in a calm tone, "Don't worry, I will win." Chapter 12:10. In the afternoon, the gloomy sky turned sunny. Just after lunch, Fong Bujue knocked on the door of his landlord, Annie Lou's house, with a bunch of things. Although Brother Jew was a maverick, he knew the ways of the world. When he was needed to do something, he knew how to adjust his words and actions. That day, he brought a bunch of gifts to Annie Lou's house and had a chat with the old couple. The things he bought were not expensive, but they were not cheap either. This was the way of giving gifts. If it was expensive, people would not accept it. If it was cheap, you would not be able to take it out. It was not easy to know the exact scale, but Fong Bujue had a good grasp of it. He did not stay in the house for long. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he said what he needed to say in a few words. He thanked the two neighbors and the elders for taking care of him over the years. Then he left. So, what was he going to do? Maybe some people had already thought that Fong Bujue was going to move. The money he won from the elegant song and his own savings were enough for him to buy a good house in S City. So, he was going to stop renting. Of course, it was not easy to move out. Not to mention that he had to choose what house to buy. Even if he bought it, he had to wait for it to be renovated. After the renovation, he had to let it dry for half a year. Optimistically, he would have to wait until the second half of next year before he could officially move out. However, since he had a plan, he still needed to tell Annie Lou and her husband first. It would be convenient for them to find their next house. To make a long story short, he went out in the morning and went around. When he got home, it was already 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When he sat on the sofa, he let out a long breath. Phew! Although I had already noticed it, when I heard it from someone else, I still felt a little uncomfortable. Fong Bujue looked at the ceiling and said to himself. What he said was not anything else. It was about his parents, or rather, his parents in this universe. Obviously, he had already realized something before today. With Fong Bujue's ability, it was too easy for him to find out if he was related to his parents by blood. He could do it when he was in elementary school. However, he had never investigated and confirmed this matter. This was because, from an emotional point of view, he wasn't willing to break the ice between them. Fong Bujue was a person who rarely revealed his emotions, so he also cherished those hard-won intimate relationships in his life. Compared to blood ties, Brother Jew preferred to believe in human nature. Compared to a man he had never met before in a parallel universe, he was more willing to treat the couple who had raised him as his family. However, when his two loved ones passed away, he did not show much sadness in front of others. During that time, many people pointed fingers at him, thinking that his relationship with his parents was not harmonious, so he left home before he even graduated from high school. He even rejected his parents' financial support. Only Wang Tanji and Bao Qing knew Fong Bujue's true thoughts. Perhaps at that time, Fong Bujue had already realized that the two ordinary people had to keep a distance from him so that they could live peacefully. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. Now, after knowing some things about karma, Fong Bujue finally understood the reason for his parents' death. But now, he still wouldn't grieve. Because long before our story began, he had already buried his sadness with a smile. Yo, everyone's here. Evening, 11:50 p.m. In the game world, in Xiao Tan's conference room. When Fong Bujue walked in, his eyes were still as lazy as a dead fish's, and there was still the ghost of a smile on his lips. If he did not say anything, no one would know what he had experienced that day, what he had learned, what he had thought, and what he had been burdened with. Of course, he wouldn't say anything, because he was Fong Bujue. When Ruo Yu saw her brother Ju, her eyes were filled with joy, but she still replied coldly, "Aren't we waiting for you every time? Brother Ju, I have something to ask you." When Xiao Tan saw Brother Ju this time, his expression was a little strange. "You want to ask about the prizes, right?" Fong Bujue asked. A while ago, Ruo Yu and Brother Ju were at loggerheads, so they didn't mention the prizes for S2. So, the prizes were left at Brother Ju's house. After the two of them had reconciled, Ruo Yu found time to distribute the prizes that Woody had sent to Xiao Tan and the others. Today was the first time they had gathered together after receiving the prizes. "Yeah," Xiao Tan said, "no matter what, the prizes are too. That's too outrageous." Before he could finish his sentence, Xiao Ling, who was beside him, spoke up. "Leader, isn't that friend of yours called Woody being a little too nosy?" Naturally, Fong Bujue knew what kind of prize the couple had received. When he was doing the trade at Solomon's Song, he had purposely asked Woody about the prize. According to the demon's words, "Don't worry, the yin-yang ring is a good thing. It has endless magical uses. I gave it to them because of my friendship with their grandfather. I wouldn't give it to ordinary people." "He's not my friend," Fong Bujue said, shrugging. "But I think the prizes don't have any malicious intentions." "Well," Xiao Tan said, "actually I did plan to buy a wedding ring recently, but at this time I got a pair of strange rings from a stranger. I feel like he's being a bit of a busybody." Xiao Ling finished his sentence. "Is that so?" Brother Ju mumbled. "I don't think that's a bad idea. After all, with your rich family background, I'm sure you won't buy a ready-made ring. I'm 80% sure you want to order two unique and extremely expensive things. Now, someone gave you a pair of magic treasures, which are completely unique and priceless. It will save you a lot of trouble. Have you started to study the material of cultivation recently? Magic treasures?" Hearing these words, and Yueqin, who didn't know the truth, took the opportunity to ridicule Brother Ju. "By the way, your deadline for this round of manuscripts is coming. You should know it in your heart. If you can't hand it in by then," the editor hadn't urged Brother Ju to hand over his manuscripts for a long time, mainly because of the matter between Brother Ju and Ruo Yu. But now there was no such problem. "Calm down. I know it." Fong Bujue didn't say it, because he was really busy these days. When he was free, he was not in the mood. When he was in the mood, he was not free. Unknowingly, he was close to death. To be honest, he didn't know if he could hand it in by then, but he still had a mysterious calmness. "Oh, right." A second later, when he saw in Yueqin's suspicious look, Brother Ju quickly changed the topic. "Didn't the company say that they wanted to use the competition to promote me? How's it going now?" "Oh, about that." And Yueqin replied unhurriedly, "The effect is quite remarkable. In the past month, the sales of your new book have increased, and your old book has been reprinted. Next quarter's royalties are worth looking forward to." "Haha, this is all thanks to the director." "Oh no, editor's training." Fong Bujue laughed and smoothly diverted the topic from magic treasures and manuscripts. In this way, everyone ate, drank, and chatted for nearly half an hour. They also complained about each other's prizes, except for Xiao Tan and Xiao Ling's rings. Everyone else received magic treasures. And Yueqin received a limited edition laptop exclusive to the Dream Company. That was what she said to the public. But in fact, it was a special hardware device for the scribe. And Yueqin still didn't know that she was actually a descendant of the scribe family and had the mission of writing the apocalypse. Of course, this was not a particularly dangerous mission. On the contrary, the scribe could be said to be the safest group of people in the world because they were directly protected by God. Since ancient times, what they had to do was to record what they saw, heard, and experienced on stone slabs, bamboo slips, and paper. Their mission hadn't changed, but the media used to record things have been constantly upgraded. Therefore, in this day and age, the scribe also used hard disks at this point. Everyone probably understood why Miss and Fong Bujue, Wang Tanji, Li Ruoyu, and Gu Xiaoling's lives intersected with each other. It was fate itself. For many years to come, she would play the role of a witness and record a lot of things. Next, let's talk about the prize Ruo you received. She received a Rubik's Cube. Its meaning was unknown, but Ruo, you could feel that it was something extraordinary. Just in case, she sent it to Gu Qin's grandfather. Jiuke was currently studying it. Finally, it was Feng Bujue's turn. Putting aside the various transactions and bets between him and Woody, he also received a prize. Brother Ju received a book. It was a black and very thick book. The cover of the book was hard. From the outside, no matter if it was the top, bottom, left, right, or side cover, there was not a single word. After opening it, it was all white paper. This was a blank book that couldn't even be distinguished from the front and back. When Feng Bujue received this wordless heavenly book, he didn't study it yet. He didn't know how to study it. He just placed it on the bookshelf at home. At first, he didn't have a clue. However, this morning, after listening to Woody talk about the effect of the truth's aberration ability, Brother Ju seemed to have a little idea of how to use this book. In the evening, he tried using it at home, but he didn't get any reaction. Thinking about it, his ability level wasn't high enough. He would probably have to train it to the parallel level first. If there was a book, it would be long. If there wasn't a book, it would be short. More than half an hour passed by quickly. That night, the 5 from Underworld Frontline would form a team for the first time since the new update was released. Unquestionably, they were going to explore the team survival mode. Therefore, after some discussion, they all returned to their login spaces. They were ready and waiting for Brother Ju to join the team. Feng Bujue, level 50. Rain Like Rain, level 50. Wang Tanji, level 50. Laughing Soul, level 50. Flower on the Rock, level 50. Please select the game mode that your team wishes to join. You have selected Team Survival Mode, Nightmare. Please confirm. Even though this was the first scenario that night, Brother Ju did not hesitate to choose Nightmare Mode. After all, the team's ability was there, so there was no need to be afraid. Your team is joining Team Survival Mode, Nightmare. The number of team members has been randomized. 6. Your team has joined the queue. Currently searching for other players or teams. Matching complete. Coordinating nerve connection. Generating scenario. Downloading. Please wait a moment. At that moment, everyone's vision darkened. The game menu could not be opened, and there was a sense of weightlessness. This meant that the teleportation had begun. Welcome to Thriller Paradise. The hoarse voice, the eerie tone, and the perfect opening gave off a creepy feeling. Download complete. You are currently in Team Survival Mode, Nightmare. This mode provides a scenario introduction, and there is a chance of triggering hidden side quests and special world building. Reward for clearing the scenario. Gain 80% extra EXP from clearing the scenario. Playing the scenario introduction soon. The game will start immediately after that. After the release of the new update, the level limit had increased again. Therefore, when the reward for clearing the scenario was generated, the chance of getting EXP had greatly increased as well. It was a summer evening. The narration started, and so did the introductory cinematic. Once the image appeared, a rather small classroom appeared before everyone's eyes. Under the illumination of an old fluorescent tube, the mottled walls, the old desks and chairs, the dust-covered windows, and the huge storage cabinets that had been corroded and rusted flashed through the lens one by one. It looked like this space that was filled with an oppressive and strange atmosphere was the starting point of this journey. I took the class monitor's letter and returned to my hometown, to the primary school classroom in my childhood memory. The narration continued. I arrived at the classroom half an hour earlier than the promised time. Not long after that, the other students started to show up. Even though we haven't seen each other for many years, no one has changed much. The narration paused for a few seconds at this point. At the same time, the camera continued to spin around the classroom as if helping the players observe their surroundings. The promised time has passed, but the class monitor still hasn't shown up. The sky darkened, and the sun seemed to have set earlier than usual. It's not even 6 p.m., but it's so dark outside the window that you can't even see your own fingers. Just as everyone was discussing whether to return or not, suddenly, someone screamed. Chapter 12:11. The introductory cinematic ended there, and at that moment, 6 players appeared in the classroom. There were 9 pairs of desks and chairs in the classroom, and they were separated into 3 rows and 3 rows. At that moment, the players were all seated. From the perspective of the blackboard, the first row from left to right was occupied by the 3 girls, Ruo Yu, and Yueqin, and Xiaoling. The left side of the second row was empty, and in the middle and right side were occupied by Feng Bujue and the 6th member of the team. Xiaotan sat alone in the middle of the 3rd row. Sigh, it is indeed an acquaintance. Xiaoling turned back to look at the 6th member of the team, and then the words escaped her lips. The reason she said, as expected, was because she had predicted this situation as well. After the release of the new update, everyone had been busy leveling up, and the most important thing in leveling up was efficiency. Without a doubt, compared to queuing up for a high-risk scenario like Team Nightmare, it was much more efficient to clear a normal dungeon with a higher success rate. Therefore, there were only 2 types of people who would solo Team Nightmare. One was the players who did not have a gaming studio, and the other was the top players. Combined with the fact that his level was about the same as the entire Underworld frontline, it was not hard to predict that he would run into an acquaintance. Phone! No! Jew! About 2 seconds later, sky-swallowing Phantom Dawn started to scream. He ignored everyone and yelled at Brother Jew like he had met his nemesis. What are you yelling for? Feng Bujue glared at the agitated Phantom Dawn and said weakly, Are you going to use the purple gore to deal with me? Call me by my name and see if I dare to answer? TSK. Being mocked like that, Phantom Dawn also realized that he had overreacted. He pursed his lips and said, How can you be so calm? You don't even think of me as a threat. My eyes won't be able to fit your 6-meter-tall figure. Feng Bujue was born with the ability to mock. I have always held you in my heart and respected you, Feng Bujue said. I'm 169 meters tall, and you're still growing. Hearing the topic of height, Phantom Dawn could not stand it anymore. He raised his voice to yell at Chungu again. Brother Ju waved his hand and replied with a half-smile. It's okay, I have a big heart. Even if you were 0.5 centimeters taller, I would still be able to accept it. How long are you guys going to talk about the height issue? At this moment, Ruo Yu couldn't stand it anymore and stopped the 2 of them. Just as he finished speaking, a system notification rang out. Your character's abilities have been restricted. You are now playing as an ordinary person. The 6 players heard the same notification. They exchanged glances with each other and knew what was going on. Sigh, I hate this kind of limited edition the most. Phantom Dawn expressed his dissatisfaction. Every time I encounter a scenario like this, I will fail. You're in luck today, Brother Ju added with a smile. Today, we'll take you through the 2nd level and experience the fun of the limited edition dungeon. Humph! Phantom Dawn crossed his arms before his chest. I'll listen to your bragging. In any case, let's confirm our identities first. And Yueqin turned to the group and said, If I'm not mistaken, the roles that we'll be playing have been assigned. As she spoke, she pointed at the top left corner of her table. At the spot she was pointing at, 3 words were carved, 3,000 nunnery. These words were carved with something like a utility knife. Judging from the handwriting, it didn't look like it was carved by an adult. Of course, engraving wasn't writing. She couldn't rule out the possibility that the handwriting was distorted due to the difficulty of engraving. This is the surname of our characters, right? Xiaoling had also noticed the words carved on her table. It was also on the top left corner, and it had the same handwriting. It had the word to show. Speaking of which, I seem to have been randomly assigned a very rare surname. Oh, I have one here as well. Xiaotan had noticed the words on the table after being reminded by his teammates. It's called Tu Tian. Mine is Minamoto, Ruo Yu said. Huh. Phantom Dawn also saw the carving on his table. Yamada, huh? Why do I feel like it's a common surname? He was strangely disappointed. After everyone reported the names that were carved on their desks, Brother Jew slowly added, "Mine is carved with by silence." A long, drawn-out silence. For some reason, after Brother Jew said those two words, the other five all looked at him strangely, and none of them said anything. After 1 minute, it was Fong Bujue who broke the silence and changed the topic. By the way, didn't the introductory cinematic say that someone was shouting? How come I didn't hear it? Perhaps, when we loaded into the character, the shouting was already over. Xiaoten was a good friend and added, Fong Bujue scratched his chin. The main quest hasn't refreshed. In other words, we need to trigger some sort of trigger. As he spoke, he stood up and walked to the lectern. Let's look around and see if we can find any clues. Hearing that, the group did not say anything and started their own search. Based on habit, at a time like this, people would first check out the things closest to them, like the insides of the tables. But soon, they confirmed that the insides of the 9 tables were empty. There was not even a scrap of paper. Then, they started to investigate the things around them according to their suspicious level. At the same time, Fong Bujue picked up an old newspaper from the lectern. It was unclear whether it was his reading habit or not, but he stood there and started to read. 5 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. The result of their investigation was as follows. The sliding door of the classroom was locked and could not be opened. When they tried to force it open, they did not hear a key-required prompt. The windows facing the field and the corridor were all closed. When they approached, there was a sealed by a dark force prompt. Looking out through the glass, it was pitch black, and they could only see their own shadows. The lockers at the back of the classroom were arranged in the same order as the tables and chairs. When they tried to open it, there was a key-required prompt. On the right side of the lectern, there was a wooden bookcase that also could not be opened. On the left side of the lectern, there was a painting on the wall. It was a painting of a huge human face. The style of the painting did not look like something a primary school student could have done. To be more specific, it was abstract. There was also a storage space inside the lectern, but it also needed a key to open. In summary, after a preliminary investigation, all the clues were focused on the old newspaper on the lectern. If there was any hint, it should be there. Xiaoling summarized the information that they had gathered to Brother Jew and asked, then, "Leader, how is it going on your side?" First, Fong Bujue put down the newspaper that he was holding. "This is a newspaper from May. The date is May 19th. "What does that mean?" Phantom Dawn asked. "Do you remember the opening sentence of the narration? This is a summer evening?" Fong Bujue asked. "Oh." Phantom Dawn nodded. "So, from the layout of this classroom, the name on the table, and the atmosphere of the scenario." And Yuechin explained, "This is undeniably a horror story that happened in Japan. Japan is in the northern hemisphere like us, so summer should be in June, July, or August every year." In other words, Ruoyu added, "This newspaper is from 1 or 2 months ago." "Not necessarily," Fong Bujue answered. "The year on a newspaper is the 47th year of Showa, or 1972. It could be a newspaper from 1 or 2 months ago, or it could be from 1 or 2 years ago, or it could even be from 10 or 20 years ago." He paused. "We have no way of guessing the year when this scenario took place, or the exact age of these characters, or the year they graduated, because the narration did not mention the present time. It only said that they had not seen each other for many years, and this many years could be 10 years, 20 years, or even 30 or 40 years. But Xiaotan heard that, and confusion colored his face. Didn't he say that no one has changed much? That means that it hasn't been that long, right? Not necessarily. Fong Bujue replied instantly and added, "Most people will say that when they reunite with their childhood friend after so many years. This is because childhood memories are the most vivid. After they recognize the person before them, the memory will be awakened, and the face in their memory will overlap with the face before them. Combined with some emotional factors, it is natural that they will say something like no one has changed." "Yes, that is the most common line we hear at class gatherings," and Yuechin added, Hey, I say." Phantom Dawn was getting impatient. "Why are you guys going so deep into these things? Is there a need to be so detailed with the background of the characters? Shouldn't the main point be to trigger the trigger and receive the main quest first? His words attracted the attention of the whole team from Underworld Frontline. Why are you guys looking at me like that? Phantom Dawn mumbled. It's so creepy. Now I know why you couldn't clear the scenario with limited abilities. Feng Bujua shrugged and shook his head. You lack patience. Tisk. Phantom Dawn heard that and said, this line and tone are so familiar. I have a feeling Brother Zen has said something similar to me before. The Brother Zen that he mentioned was naturally Meng Jingchan. By the way, why aren't you queuing up with your teammate from the studio? The mention of Brother Zen reminded Xiao Tan of something. About that. Phantom Dawn hesitated. That might be related to the studio's secret. You'd better not ask. Xiao Ling was good at reading people's expressions. Seeing this, she nudged Xiao Tan with her elbow to remind him. Oh, I'm sorry. Xiao Tan smiled sheepishly. Just pretend I didn't ask. Actually, there's nothing to hide. Phantom Dawn pouted. After all, none of you are professional players. As long as you don't spread it around, I don't mind telling you this. He paused for half a second before continuing. When we're leveling up, our studio will arrange a team based on everyone's specialties. And me, I'm the type who is more suited for solo queuing. Phantom Dawn shrugged and continued in a smug tone. To put it bluntly, in a scenario with limited abilities, I will be 100% excess combat power. In other words, you'll be a burden in a scenario like this. Feng Bujua poured a bucket of cold water on the man's pride. Stop wasting my time. Phantom Dawn scolded. Didn't you say you would help me clear the scenario? It's been 10 minutes since the scenario started, and we haven't even found the main quest. Why are you being so arrogant? Don't be hasty, Yamada-kun. Feng Bujua smiled. I'm about to tell you something related to the main quest. Then, with a smile on his face, Brother Ju used a relaxed tone to say something that made Phantom Dawn's scalp go numb. Based on what I've read in the past few minutes, all the news in this newspaper is about a school. Of course, if I'm not mistaken, it's the school that we're at. As he said that, he used his eyes to point at the seat at the back of the classroom. The headline is "A fire broke out in the warehouse opposite the headmaster's office." Even though the fire did not spread, a student died in the fire, and the name of the student who died is Takayuki Suzuki. When he said that, his teammates, especially Xiao Tan and Phantom Dawn, shivered. This was because they remembered that the name carved on the top left corner of the seat was Suzuki. You mean, 2 seconds later, Ruoyu was the first to chime in. That Suzuki is the class monitor who has been missing for so long. She paused for a second before adding, that doesn't make sense, does it? That's right. Xiao Ling agreed. Just think of him as the class monitor. This Suzuki was burned to death when he was still a student, and the incident was published in the newspaper. There is no reason for his classmates to not know about this. Under such circumstances, the fact that they received a letter from him is enough to scare them half to death. Who would go to the appointment with him? You have a point. And Yuachin thought about it and added, from the tone of the narrator, no matter who the real class monitor is, at least the students who came to the appointment believe that he or she was still alive and well, so it can't be Suzuki. Not bad. Feng Bujua listened to everyone's opinion and added, therefore, the actual situation might be, Takayuki Suzuki was once a member of this class, but he was not the class monitor. Furthermore, he was burned to death when he was still a student, so he did not show up at today's meeting. There's also the possibility that the Suzuki who was burned to death was not a member of this class, but a member of this school. After all, Suzuki is a rather common surname in Japan. At this point, Brother Ju changed the topic. But Chapter 1212. In my opinion, since this newspaper has appeared here, then this Suzuki Takayuki, who was burned to death, and the Suzuki in this class are most likely the same person. Feng Bujue continued. From that, we can come up with a logical hypothesis. That year, Suzuki's death was related to this class monitor, but nothing happened at the time. Many years later, for some reason, this class monitor returned to the school, and triggered the retribution. Then he died. After he died, he turned into a ghost and planned to drag the rest of the class down with him. Therefore, the beginning of this scenario was born. I don't know why, but once you put it that way, it doesn't feel that scary anymore. After hearing what Brother Jew had to say, and Yuechin's terror points had indeed dropped quite a bit. You've been talking for so long, Phantom Dawn said, but we still haven't confirmed anything, and the main quest hasn't been triggered yet. Didn't I tell you to be patient? Feng Bujue said leisurely. Go through all the information you know in your mind and come up with some logical deduction. That way, you'll be able to deal with any unexpected situation with ease. He used the tone of a teacher to finish this paragraph unhurriedly. Then, he spread out the newspaper and showed it to everyone. Now, let's talk about the other articles in the newspaper. Brother Jew continued. There are 3 articles related to this school. They are: Principal Miyamoto committed suicide at home, Teacher Sato went insane in the toilet, and student Noguchi Eiji disappeared. There are 2 other articles. One is about this small town's shrine holding a Sansha shrine a few days ago, and the other is about the American Empire returning Okinawa to Japan. The last article takes up the most space. It takes up several pages, but it has nothing to do with the plot of this scenario. Just what kind of newspaper is this? Xiaoting commented with a dry laugh. It has a bunch of articles about this school, and then it's about the country. The content span is a bit too big, isn't it? This should be a village newspaper, right? Feng Bujue had already thought about this problem. It's the kind of newspaper that's self-published in small towns. From writing, printing, and distribution, it's all done locally. The content of the report is also mainly local news, with a little bit of big news that the whole country knows. Can this kind of publication really survive? And Yuechin interrupted. How much news can there be in a small town? Haha, you're right. Feng Bujue laughed. That's why they're doing weekly. Oh. And Yuechin immediately understood what he meant. The things I mentioned just now came in different order, ranging from 1 to 7 days. Feng Bujue continued. Suzuki was burned to death on May 13th. Noguchi Eiji went missing on May 14th. May 15th was the day the U.S. military returned Okinawa to Japan. May 16th was the day Sato became mentally unstable. May 18th was the day the principal hanged himself at home. And finally, the newspaper was published on the 19th. This week sure has been a tough one. Xiaoting could not help but grumble after hearing that. It's okay. For this school, only 2 people died. One went crazy and one went missing. Feng Bujue continued. If we take this supernatural setting into account, there's an 80% chance that these things are related to cause and effect. Come to think of it, there aren't that many people who died. It's not even the average number of people who died in a horror movie. Ruoyu, who had not spoken for a long time, suddenly cracked a joke with her cold tone. If we count the 6 of us, the number should be enough. But in the end, only Feng Bujue was laughing. The others did not find the joke at all, and her words only increased their terror points. All right, that's all we know. Now it's time to solve the puzzle. Feng Bujue said as he folded the newspaper. Before I told you about Suzuki, I already deciphered the hidden message in the newspaper. Actually, it's not that hard. Just follow the original fold and find a complete sentence. Wait a minute. When Phantom Dawn heard that, he asked, can't you solve the puzzle first and then tell us what you've just told us? You don't get it, do you? I purposely told you the whole story first. Feng Bujue replied matter-of-factly. So far, the main quest hasn't been triggered, and the system hasn't given us any time limit. If that's the case, why don't we make full use of this unlimited time? He paused before adding, think about it this way. What if after the main quest is triggered, there's a new rule like you have to finish the scenario in a certain amount of time? Then you won't have the time or the mood to study the plot anymore. Okay, you have a point there. Phantom Dawn narrowed his eyes and drawled, thank you for your advice. When the 2 were conversing, Feng Bujue's hands did not stop moving. He returned the newspaper to its original state on the podium and then flipped it to the side. He pointed a crease and said, okay, everyone, come take a look. This is the crease that joins the 2 different articles together. The words on both sides of the crease can be read together from top to bottom. It's right before you, but you can't see it. Xiaoling was indeed good. She was reading the newspaper upside down, but she soon managed to read out the Japanese kana on the paper. Ho! You're a liberal arts student after all. You're so good. Feng Bujue praised her instantly. But what does this sentence mean? After Xiaoling finished reading it, she lowered her head to think. Hey, why does this sentence sound so scary? After Phantom Dawn heard the sentence, he instinctively nudged half a step toward Xiao Tan, who was closest to him. There was nervousness on his face. He was quite straightforward in this regard. If he was afraid, he was afraid. There was nothing to be embarrassed about. It's pointless for you to come closer. I'm also afraid. Seeing this, Xiao Tan admitted his fear. Do you two want to find a corner to hug each other and wait for us to solve the puzzle before we call for you? Brother Bujue was a man with a talent for sarcasm. Naturally, he would not miss this opportunity. Just as Phantom Dawn was about to retort, I know it now. Suddenly, Inuetchin exclaimed softly and continued, right in front refers to sitting in the classroom, facing the front. As she spoke, she walked to the blackboard. With regards to why you can't see it, she took several steps closer and leaned against the blackboard to take a closer look. So, that's why. The next second, she picked up a piece of white chalk from the chalk trough and started to scribble back and forth on the blackboard. Not long after, an area in the middle of the blackboard was painted light white, and in the area that was painted white, there were a few stains that did not change color due to the chalk. Just like that, when Inuetchin put down the chalk, the word spin appeared on the blackboard. Spin, Xiao Tan said. Spin what? We said that. He happened to raise his head. Does it mean that by turning the light, it will trigger some kind of mechanism? I think it's more reliable to move the tables and chairs, right? Phantom Dawn was not just complaining. Actually, he had been thinking about it as well. You too. Feng Bujue took on the tone of a veteran. He tucked the newspaper under his arm and sauntered toward the painting on the wall. It's better to use your brain more than anything else. When he said that, he reached out to grab the frame. A second later, he exerted a little force with one hand, and a click sound was heard from the back of the painting. Then, the whole painting rotated 180 degrees, just like that. The huge face on the painting was originally in a very abstract state. However, after the painting was turned upside down, it was a monstrous face with a hideous grin. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Just as the painting finished its rotation, the fluorescent tube at the top of the classroom, the only source of light in the room, flickered twice and went out. Hey, no way. What's going on? Did you switch to the light switch? Phantom Dawn spoke very quickly, and his voice was shaking. Obviously, his terror points were climbing. Brother Ju, are you okay? 1 second later, Xiao Tan also used his cowardly voice to ask a question that was not important. Their reaction was a common human reaction when they were scared. When they were scared and helpless, they would desperately try to communicate with their own kind to ease the anxiety in their heart. And the way to communicate was by asking questions. However, at times like that, people's thinking would slow down or even stop completely. Therefore, the questions they asked would lack logic, meaning, and even incoherence. Chill, don't talk. Feng Bujue quickly replied to silence the two guys who were more cowardly than girls. Dong. Almost at the same time, Brother Ju said that another strange sound came from the other corner of the classroom. What is that? Even though Brother Ju had told them to stop talking, when Phantom Dawn heard the sound, he could not help but ask. It should be the wooden bookcase to the right of the lectern that has opened. Then, Ruo Yu's rather calm voice came from the dark. Don't move. I'll go take a look, Feng Bujue said as he walked toward the source of the sound. It was worth noting that Brother Ju did not have the data perspective, because in a limited scenario, the data perspective would be limited as well. Phantom Dawn was in a similar situation, so he would often fail when he ran into a limited scenario. However, for Feng Bujue, being unable to use the data perspective did not mean that he could not move in the dark. Brother Ju was a well-trained man. His sense of time and space had always been very accurate. Using this classroom as an example, it was a rectangular space. It was not big, and the decorations had a certain pattern. In an environment like this, Brother Jew only needed to observe for 1 or 2 minutes, and he could move around with his eyes closed. Be careful, perhaps that sound is the sound of some kind of monster crawling out from the bookcase. Ruoyu could not move in the dark, but she could still warn her. Sis, can you not say something so scary? Before Brother Jew could reply, Phantom Dawn yelled agitatedly from the other side. It's fine. I'll act according to the situation. Feng Bujuo was calm. When he replied, he had already reached the wooden bookcase. In the end, he was a man without fear. In this pitch-black environment, in this terrifying atmosphere, he did not hesitate to reach his hand into the cabinet and quickly fumble around. However, at that moment, something changed. Tap, tap, tap. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from the corridor outside the window. It was not loud, but it was loud enough for the 6 players who were surrounded by darkness and silence to hear it clearly. And it was not only the sound that came. Following the footsteps was a heavy smell of blood. Many people know that when a person's senses are limited in one sense, the other senses become sharper. For example, at that moment, the players in the darkness could clearly sense the approach of an unknown creature through their hearing and smell. This feeling was no doubt bad. In fact, it was worse than having a scary monster appear before them. Brother Ju, Xiao Tan's voice rang out again. He lowered his voice and said with a trembling voice, "This is getting out of hand," after a short 2 seconds of silence. "Calm down, I found the flashlight." Feng Bujue's reply rang out, and he used a firm tone to give them a piece of good news. Tap! Before he finished, Brother Ju had already switched on the flashlight that he was holding. Without thinking about it, he aimed the light down the corridor. At that moment, all 6 players clearly saw a pale face stuck to the window glass in the corridor, staring at the people in the classroom with a pair of empty eyes that were overflowing with blood. The moment the flashlight shone on it, the face twisted and let out a shrill scream. It quickly retreated backward. In the blink of an eye, following another series of hurried footsteps, the face disappeared into the darkness outside the corridor. This scene was truly hair-raising and abnormally terrifying. Even Ruoyu and the other 2 were scared, much less Xiao Tan and Phantom Dawn. Their hearts raced, and their hair stood on end. You can imagine, in a place like this, if we're too slow to switch on the flashlight, it might come in here. Only Feng Bujue was calm and collected. He even said something that sent chills down the spine. "Can you stop talking? Your words are scarier than the ghost itself." At that moment, Phantom Dawn had entered a state of extreme fear and anger. He turned around to grumble at Chengge. "How do you know it's a ghost?" Feng Bujue replied calmly. "Based on the sound of its footsteps, I think it's more likely to have a physical body." Chapter 12:13. Do you still think that's a person after seeing that face? Phantom Dawn asked. I just want to say, if the thing is real, then we shouldn't treat it as a ghost. If you treat it as a normal monster, then it won't be that scary. Feng Bujue replied in a relaxed tone. TSK. If not for the restriction, we wouldn't be that scary even if there were hundreds of them. Phantom Dawn pouted. That was the truth. If he had the support of the data perspective, even in the dark, he would be able to see the monster's exact location and strength. Then, there would be nothing to be afraid of. Of course, if there wasn't a restriction, you would have led the 5 of us to clear the scenario alone. Wouldn't you? Feng Bujue shrugged. That kind of assumption is meaningless now. But personally, I think adaptation and overcoming are the most interesting parts of this game. The more restricted it is, the more interesting it is. As he spoke, he reached into the wooden bookshelf to take out a second flashlight and showed it to his teammates. All right, back to the topic. 2 seconds later, Brother Ju said, "There are 6 flashlights inside the bookshelf." He paused and raised his head to look at the fluorescent tube that was no longer shining. "If I'm not mistaken, that light won't come on anymore, so we'll have to rely on these flashlights to see." Xiaotan dragged out a sigh. "I hate this kind of restriction the most." Even though he said that, he was the first to step forward to take the flashlight from Brother Ju. Click! Once he took the flashlight, Xiao Tan switched it on and immediately raised the flashlight to scan the classroom. He wanted to see if there was anything scary hiding in the dark. Are you done with the confirmation? Feng Bujua saw that he had finished scanning, so he asked. Yes. Xiao Tan nodded. Then turn it off, Brother Ju said. Xiao Tan was stunned. What are you laughing at? Feng Bujua said confidently. Do you know how long a flashlight battery can last? What if all 6 of us are wiped out in 20 minutes? Xiao Tan thought about it and turned off his flashlight with a sigh. While the 2 of them were talking, Ruo Yu and the other girls came forward to take out their flashlights. When they heard Brother Ju's words, they were very tactful. They only turned on their flashlights to see if it worked. Then, they immediately turned them off. From now on, we'll take turns to turn on the flashlight to provide light. After everyone picked up their flashlights, Feng Bujua opened his lips to say, I will be the first to do it. After my flashlight runs out of power, someone else will be in charge of lighting it. Wait a minute, Xiao Ling interrupted and asked, doesn't that mean everyone's eyes have to follow the same person's flashlight? Yes, Feng Bujua replied. Therefore, I wish to add a few more restrictions. Naturally, he had already come up with an answer to Xiaoling's question. When you feel something strange in the dark, when you leave the group under certain circumstances, or when you split up to search, everyone can turn on their flashlights according to their needs. He paused. As for now, he raised the flashlight and shone it on his face from bottom to top. He created the effect of a horror movie and said with a smile, Everyone, please follow me and look over there. At this point, he once again changed the direction of the flashlight and shone the circle of light at the window where the strange face had appeared just now. Everyone's gaze also shifted there. Look at the windowsill. Feng Bujua was afraid that someone might have missed it, so he added. They saw that on the very narrow windowsill, there was a shining dot. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was a key. It's the key. Phantom Dawn screamed excitedly when he recognized the item. Wow, you're quite excited. Brother Ju took the opportunity to add, then, please go and get it for us. Why do you want me to go? In 1 second, Phantom Dawn was scared out of his wits. Because someone has to go, Feng Bujua said. Even if I said I would lead you through the nightmare dungeon, I'm not actually leading you through training, right? You can't just lie down and win, right? Oh, Phantom Dawn answered, and then added in a sarcastic tone. Then I should thank you for your training and guidance. You're welcome. Feng Bujua continued the man's sentence without any pressure. I can already feel the endless gratitude in your eyes. Now go and get the key. Stop wasting my battery. Humph. Phantom Dawn huffed angrily, but he still went. Even though Brother Ju's tone was mocking, there was a point to what he said. As a member of the team, it was natural for Phantom Dawn to contribute. Since he did not help much in the puzzle-solving part, then when it came to the adventure part, he had to help. One step. Phantom Dawn approached the window cautiously. Outside the window, it was still dark. After the flashlight shone through the window, it was swallowed up by the thick darkness before them. If at that moment, a scary face suddenly jumped out from behind the window, Phantom Dawn would have jumped out of his skin in fright. Thankfully, that did not happen. When Phantom Dawn reached the window, he suddenly picked up speed. He leaned forward and grabbed the key with his eyes closed. Then, he turned around and ran back to the rest of the team. Here. When he passed the key to Feng Bujua, Phantom Dawn pronounced the word with conviction. The pride in his voice was palpable. What are you so proud of? How much effort did it take to get that key? Feng Bujua narrowed his eyes and poured a bucket of cold water over his teammates' enthusiasm. After that, he did not give the man the chance to argue and added, In any case, let's try the one closest to us first. Based on the hint that they had received earlier, there were only 2 places in the classroom that needed a key to open. The first was the storage space inside the lectern, and the second was the 9 lockers at the back of the classroom. When Brother Ju mentioned the one closest to us, he was obviously referring to the lectern. Screech. The key that Phantom Dawn grabbed slid smoothly into the keyhole on the lectern's inner panel. The next second, Feng Bujua turned the key without hesitation and opened the panel. Then a black thing appeared in front of everyone's eyes. When When they saw the thing inside the lectern, even Inuit could not help but yelp. Her yelp caused Xiao Tan and Phantom Dawn, who were more cowardly, to shiver. What's going on? Xiao Tan asked immediately. Don't panic. Feng Bujue seemed to be telling his teammates the same thing. It's just hair. As he said that, he pulled out a large clump of long, black hair from inside the lectern and placed it on the lectern. What the F***? Phantom Dawn's scalp was numb. What the hell is this? When Brother Ju heard that, a smile appeared on his face. He mocked. It's not a ghost. It's a wig. For some reason, after he said that, Ruo Yu burst out laughing. She was beautiful when she laughed, but at that moment, other than Brother Ju, no one understood why she was laughing. Everyone else could only sense a faint chill in her laughter. From everyone's expression, it looks like none of you are willing to touch this thing. After handing out the fake, Feng Bujue continued. Then, I will not stand on ceremony and will be responsible for keeping and carrying this item. Carrying? Phantom Dawn was getting more and more shocked. Even though he had sparred with Brother Ju in the past and had watched him compete, he had not been in a team dungeon with Brother Ju before. Today, this was the first time he had seen Feng Bujue up close in a scary scenario like this. Why are you bringing this thing with you? Do you even need to ask? Feng Bujue said as he pressed his hand on the clump of hair to show the item's information to his teammates. Item name: strange long hair. Item type: plot. Item quality: normal function. Unknown can be taken out of the scenario. Yes, remark, human hair. No one knows why it was placed here. Look, this is a plot item that can be taken out of the scenario. In other words, we might use this to trigger some kind of hidden plot, Feng Bujue said. Even if it's not triggered, we can use it to turn it into a puzzle card. He paused for half a second before adding. Also, hair is very tensile. If we need to use a rope later, we only need to braid this hair, and it can be used as a rope. Before Brother Ju finished, Ruo Yu came out with another sarcastic comment. You can't even tie your shoelaces properly, and you're still thinking about braiding? It had to be said that the sarcasm was quite sharp. Can't I just say that? Can I? Brother Ju roared angrily. At the same time, Xiaoling lowered her voice and whispered into Xiao Tan's ear. It feels like the relationship between Cousin Sis and Brother Ju is getting better than before. How can you tell? Xiao Tan whispered back. How come it feels like the two of them are sinking deeper into some kind of strange territory? Fine. Take it or leave it. I don't care if you want to use it as a skipping rope. Phantom Dawn, who did not know much about Brother Ju's situation, got down to business. By the way, is there anything else on the podium? Yes, there are two more. Feng Bujue replied and pulled out a key and a yellowed piece of paper from the podium. The key looked small, and it did not look like it was used to open a door. The players naturally thought that it was the key to one of the boxes on the storage cupboard. As for the yellowed piece of paper, there are vertical lines on both sides, but there is no page number. Based on the size and the thickness of the paper, Feng Bujue raised the paper at an angle where everyone could see it and shone the flashlight on it. This paper should have been torn out from an exercise book. Based on the handwriting, it's probably written by a primary school student. Xiao Ling stared at the words on the paper for a few seconds before adding. Based on the content, it looks like a diary, and Yuet-Shin said. By the way, are there any words on the back? No. When Feng Bujue replied, he flipped the paper around to show his teammates before turning it back to the side with the words on it. Then, the hints are all on the front, right? Phantom Dawn said as he started to read the content on the paper. May 13th, Sunny. During lunch break, the warehouse opposite the headmaster's office suddenly caught on fire. The teacher immediately organized us to go to the field as if we were doing a drill. The firefighters soon came and put out the fire in the warehouse. I saw them carry a person out of the fire on a stretcher and send him to the ambulance. Even though I have no idea who he is, I hope he's fine. Due to the fire, the afternoon class was canceled. After we returned to the classroom, the teacher told us to pack our bags and go home. Before I went home, I realized that I haven't seen Suzuki since lunch break. I asked the teacher where Suzuki went, and the teacher said that he had already gone home. Hearing Sensei's words, I'm also relieved. For a moment, I thought Suzuki-san was injured by the fire. But Suzuki sure has a bad memory. This morning, he forgot the key to his locker, so he left his flute in my locker. After school, he forgot to take his flute and went home. Oh well, I'll return it to him tomorrow. Second year A. Noguchi Eiji. The diary was written from top to bottom and from right to left. The whole entry was written in hiragana, a type of phonetic script used in Japanese. There were very few Chinese characters, but the system came with its own translation. From the choice of words, handwriting, and language organization, it did look like the handwriting of a primary school student. Noguchi, sit on the left side of the table on my left side. Phone Bujo waited for about a minute. After he saw that his teammates had finished reading the content, he opened his lips to say, "He is the student that I mentioned earlier, the one who disappeared on May 14th. According to the newspaper report, after he left home for school on the morning of the 14th, no one saw him again." Xiao Tan added with a pale face. There is no writing on the back of the paper, which means that the entry written by number 13 is the last entry of Noguchi's diary, right? That's not necessary. Phantom Dawn added in a shaking voice. Based on the content of the diary, he must have been tricked by Suzuki's spirit. In the end, he died without a body to be found. Huh? At that moment, Phone Bujua suddenly chuckled coldly and used a flashlight to shine on his face. What do you mean by died without a body to be found? Isn't that a bit too rash? You, Phantom Dawn stammered. What are you trying to say now? Brother Ju chuckled wickedly. Then he shone the flashlight on the row of lockers at the back of the classroom. Perhaps we will see his body soon. Chapter 12-14. After scaring everyone, Phone Bujua strode toward the lockers. Since he was holding the flashlight, his teammates had to follow him. The lockers at the back of the classroom were embedded into the wall. The height was meant to fit the height of the primary school students. It was too small for the adults, and the arrangement of the lockers matched the seating arrangement of the students. On the top row, from left to right, were the names Minamoto, Senkaku, and Yasu. On the second row were Noguchi, Yamada, and Watanabe. On the third row were Watanabe, Sasuda, and Suzuki. By the way, after the investigation, the class monitor's identity should have been confirmed, right? Phone Bujua walked to the lockers and said, "Of the 9 people in this class, 6 are here now, and of the remaining 3, Suzuki was burned to death in the 47th year of Showa, and Noguchi disappeared the day after Suzuki was burned to death. Therefore, the only Watanabe who has not shown up is the class monitor." After hearing what Brother Ju said, Ruayu agreed. From the seating arrangement, it is reasonable for the class monitor to sit at the last row. I don't care who the class monitor is anymore. Phantom Dawn looked at Brother Ju with resentment. I only care about whether there is a dead body inside Noguchi's box or not. Obviously, Phantom Dawn was deeply shocked by what Brother Ju had said, so he was worried about what was inside the lockers. Ha ha ha. Xiaoten heard that and laughed drily. Based on the size of the box, it is impossible for a 7-year-old primary school student to fit inside. Theoretically speaking, it shouldn't be possible. Phone Bujua turned his head to look at Xiaotan. The size of the lockers is about 28 by 30 by 33 centimeters. It will be hard enough to fit a baby, much less an 8-year-old. At this point, he smiled wickedly. But that is under normal circumstances. Hey, you're going to say something horrible again, aren't you? Phantom Dawn could already guess what Brother Ju was up to. No, I'm just talking about a math problem. Phone Bujua replied, as far as I know, if an 8-year-old child is crushed into a paste, the volume of its body can be compressed to about 0.024 cubic meters. As for the volume of this box, 0.02772 cubic meters. Xiao Ling gave a very accurate answer, almost without thinking. That's how it is, Phone Bujua replied with a smile. What do you mean? Phantom Dawn was shocked again. What do you mean by according to your knowledge? How do you know the volume of a child crushed into a paste? You ran over it before, didn't you? After crushing it, You put it in a container and tested it, right? No, that's what you said. I didn't say anything. When Feng Bujue replied, he had already turned his head away and was ready to open the box. Hey, your guilty reaction is even more suspicious. Phantom Dawn noticed Brother Ju's reaction, and he became even more suspicious. However, Brother Ju ignored him. He focused on inserting the key that he found on the podium into the box with the name Noguchi on it. TSK. In the dim environment, the sound of the key sliding into the lock was particularly jarring. When the chest was opened, even though the group standing behind him did not say anything, their hearts were in their throats. After all, under such circumstances, other than Feng Bujue, who was not afraid, the others would be more or less afraid. After pulling open the box, Feng Bujue said darkly, "Looks like Noguchi is not inside." "That's normal." Phantom Dawn yelled, "Why do you sound so disappointed?" "He was just trying to scare you," and Yuechin said, "Wooden cabinets like this, if you stuff dismembered corpses inside, the smell and blood will definitely seep out, and people will find it on the same day." TSK. I knew it. Phantom Dawn thought that made sense, so he turned to Brother Ju. "You are trying to forcefully increase your teammates' terror points. Are you trying to lower my terror rating?" "Yes." To his surprise, Feng Bujue admitted it openly. "That is my plan. If you're not satisfied, learn to think before you encounter anything. Be prepared for any situation. That way, you won't be so afraid." "Humph. Just you wait." Phantom Dawn felt like he had been lectured again, and he was very annoyed, but he could only harumph and spit out some harsh words. "All right, back to the topic. Everyone, come and take a look at this." Several seconds later, Feng Bujue took out the item inside Noguchi's box and showed it to everyone. Item name: Suzuki's flute. Item type: plot item. Rarity: broken function. Activate the mechanism in the music room. Can be taken out of the scenario. No remark. Only male players can play the flute. Since it can't be taken out of the scenario, it means that it is related to the main plot, Xiao Tan said after reading it. "But the scenario hasn't given us a main quest," Xiao Ling said. Just as they were talking, suddenly, Gudong, a strange sound came, and it gave the 5 members of the team a scare. This was especially true for Phantom Dawn. In his shock, he instinctively switched on his flashlight. What was that sound?" Xiao Tan asked in a hurry. "That sound," Ruoyu, who stood on the other side, said, "it seems to have come from Suzuki's box." She was not mistaken. The source of the sound was none other than the box inside the box. "I believe the act of obtaining the flute has triggered some kind of event," Feng Bujue said. Then, "Phantom Dawn, since you've turned on your flashlight, why don't you shine it on the situation behind us?" Even though Brother Ju did not turn around, based on the sound and the angle of the light, he knew who had turned on the flashlight. What if the commotion earlier was some kind of diversion? At least we'll be prepared. Okay, Phantom Dawn replied. He quickly turned his flashlight to look behind him. He swept it back and forth to monitor the windows in the corridor and the whole classroom. Then, "Let me take a look and see what's inside Suzuki-kun's box," Feng Bujue said as he reached his hand toward the box that had made the sound. Click! Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Just as Brother Ju's right hand was about to touch the box door opened on its own. Then a pale hand reached out from inside to grab Brother Ju's wrist. This sudden turn of events caused Yuechin to cry out in alarm once again. Phantom Dawn, who heard the scream, also turned around and saw the horrifying scene. "Oh, what are you doing?" Feng Bujue mumbled casually. He slowly squatted down so that his gaze was at the same level as the box. After squatting down, Brother Ju raised the flashlight in his left hand and shone it into the box. In the next second, everyone saw a slightly green, childlike face. That face could be said to be 90% like that of a ghost, and only 10% like that of a human. The blood-colored pupils, abnormal skin color, and that terrifying face were all typical features of an evil spirit. Gah! When the flashlight shone on it, the face screamed and immediately shrank back. From a physical perspective, there was no room for him to retreat, but in this kind of supernatural scenario, it was normal for Newton to be ignored by the group. In any case, the monster quickly retreated more than 30 centimeters, and the small hand that grabbed Brother Jew's wrist let go. Following the face, it retreated into the space inside the box. But at this moment, a paw sound was heard. But Fong Bujue flipped his hand and used his right hand to grab the monster's wrist. "You want to run after showing off?" It was unclear who was the real villain, but Fong Bujue took on the attitude of a bully bullying a child. As he trash-talked, he yanked the monster out of the box. For a moment, the baby in the box cried out incessantly, like a small animal that had been injured and was running away. What the F***CK? What the hell is going on? Phantom Dawn, who saw this, felt like there was a string that snapped in his brain. In those 10 seconds, his terror points dropped to 0 because he could not understand what was going on. To give an inappropriate example, it was like watching an animal training performance in a circus. Halfway through the performance, the animal trainer on the stage suddenly jumped into a ring of fire. Then, the lion he raised rewarded him with a piece of meat and patted his head. In a way, this kind of performance was more impressive than a lion jumping into a ring of fire. "You want to compete with me in terms of strength?" It did not take long for Fong Bujue to drag the monster, who should have escaped according to the normal plot, out of the storage box. He even taunted the monster, who was about the size of an 8-year-old child, smugly. "Hold this for me," Brother Jew said, and tossed the flashlight to Xiao Tan, who was standing behind him. That way, he could use his hands to torment the monster that he had captured. "Speak. What is your name? How did you die? When will you die?" Fong Bujue asked the monster 3 questions and added, "Leniency to those who confess, severity to those who resist. So, you're still a member of the party." Ruo, you used this opportunity to mock Brother Jew. "What do you mean?" Fong Bujue said. "For someone like us, no matter what, we have to be a judge." "Oh no. King of Hell." "Ja." The little monster ignored their banter. After confirming that struggling was futile, it used an even more shrill voice to scream. That scream was shrill. How shrill was it? The player's life points dropped by 5% from the scream. Seeing that, how could Fong Bujue hold back his anger? He reacted immediately. He used his right hand to push the little monster against the lockers and used his left hand to clamp over the monster's mouth. This trick was really effective. It suppressed the imp's howl to a level where it wouldn't cause damage to the player. After 2 seconds of consideration, Fong Bujue gave Xiao Tan an order. "Xiao Tan, move the flashlight away from the monster." "Okay." By then, Xiao Tan was no longer that afraid, mainly because he had a teammate who was scarier than a ghost to take control of the situation. After he answered, he quickly moved the flashlight away from the monster. Almost at the same time as the light moved away, the monster's howl also slowed down and gradually disappeared. "Okay, I'll give you one more chance." Fong Bujue looked into the monster's red eyes and said, "I'm asking you to speak now. If you answer my questions, I will consider letting you go or free you." He paused, and a ferocious look flashed across his face. "If you don't know what's good for you and resist stubbornly, I'll use the wig on the podium to wrap you up like a dumpling. Then I'll use some physical means to combine you with the flashlight and make you my equipment." What the F***CK? When Phantom Dawn heard that, he pictured the scene in his mind, and goosebumps rose all over his body. "Aren't you a bit too cruel? You won't even let a ghost go? He's just a kid. Stop wasting time. I'm in the middle of a negotiation." Fong Bujue turned back to glare at Phantom Dawn impatiently before turning back to the monster. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" The little monster really did grunt in reply. Therefore, Fong Bujue released his left hand and used both of his hands to clamp down on the boy's body and press him against the lockers. This time, the monster who was not hit by the light seemed calmer, and he did not scream. Of course, he could not rule out the possibility that Brother Jew's scare had worked. "What is your name?" Fong Bujue's question soon arrived. "Yi, Naguchi Eiji. Your ghost? aren't you? Yes. When did you die? How did you die? I can't remember. Then, will you remember? I. When he was asked that question, Noguchi's expression shifted slightly, and pain appeared on his face. I remember, that morning, I was the first to arrive in class. The rest of the students were not there yet. I noticed that Suzuki's lockers were not locked, so I wanted to open it to take a look, and then, when Noguchi said this, he seemed to recall something particularly terrifying. His whole face twisted, and his eyes moved to Suzuki's storage box. Yes, I was trapped in the lockers. After a moment of hesitation, Noguchi seemed to remember something. I always wanted to get out. Every time I heard someone approaching the lockers, I would grab him or her. I wanted them to drag me out, but they were all pulled into the lockers. It was so dark inside. There were so many people. They were all broken, turned into crack. Just as Noguchi was halfway through his sentence, all the lockers on top of the lockers suddenly burst open from the inside, and several arms stretched out from each of the lockers. These arms were of different thickness and size, but they were all pale. Since Noguchi was pressed against the lockers, the arms grabbed him tightly as soon as they reached out. No, save me. Noguchi only had time to say these few words before he was torn into pieces by the dozens of hands and forcibly dragged back into the storage box. Clap, 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 clap. Immediately after, the hands retracted back into the boxes at a strange speed, and the doors of the 9 storage boxes closed in response. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.